Right. Welcome to Plat Overwatch episode 132. Oh, the kickoff clash. What a tournament it was. It had highs, it had lows. I don't remember too much of it. I went there in person, may have got astoundingly drunk, and I'm going to heavily rely on Avast, Custa, and Reinforce to fill me in on what actually happened. I do remember the finals, but not much of the other stuff. So, yeah, that's my caveat right at the beginning of the episode. It was fun, though.
I saw you in the crowd. You had a Shock jersey, you had a Dallas Fuel hoodie, you had a Florida Mayhem jacket. You were switching sides more than the fans in 2018.
No, I had one team for each match, roughly. Apart from the finals, where Face gave me his jersey and I had to pick between Gladiators and Fuel. And I had the feeling, man. I had the feeling Gladiators were wiping it. So I wore Face's jersey there. So ended up being very successful.
This cat, man, it just can't. They can't stop themselves. I don't know what it is.
My cat's been expelled. Bo's already been locked out before it even began.
See, if I lock them out, they're gonna howl like the damned.
Mine is peaceful. Just peaceful in little corner.
Oh, Siri.
That's the difference between a dog and a cat right there. Right
you want to
there.
say hi? Come here.
Oh, this is the best episode already. Oh,
there we go.
That's
there we go.
adorable.
You just ate cereal, and now you want to lick my mouth.
oh.
Nice.
I can't get her up more because then she'll pee on the floor. But you know, there it goes.
So wait, what? If you lift
she
your
like a
dog, she just uncontrollably pisses.
I mean, she's scared. Yeah, it's a what it's called, flight. You know, scared thing where she
Yeah,
just like
the flight or piss.
yeah.
I've heard that one.
Look, don't be mean to her. It's not her fault, okay? She gets scared and then she pees, okay? It's okay. They're not making fun of you.
Yeah, no. We're
Yeah.
not. We
Yeah.
all wish we had a little doggy at home as well. What's the name of the dog again, Jonathan?
Siri with a C
Siri.
from
Siri
the
with a
Witcher
C.
series. Yeah.
Ah,
The Witcher show.
Oh.
Cyrilla.
Cyrilla. Do they go by the full name Cyrilla?
No, I never called her Cyrilla, but Siri.
There you go.
And then
Okay.
people think we named her after Apple, and I'm like, yeah, big fan of Steve Jobs. That's fine.
The thing is, either of those options would be mildly bat chest if you really think about it. If it was
What,
Apple or
bat
Siri.
chest?
Yeah,
You
it's
call
just
it
a tad.
Siri.
Yeah, I think it's a tad bat chest. It's not a bad way though. It's just a smidgen of bat chest, and that's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with a little
bat.
smidge. Little smidge.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Custa, you were doing a different role at the kickoff clash as well. You abandoned Jonathan to a two-person desk and ran away and eloped with Jack instead. You were doing casting.
Yeah, Jack was like, run away with me to Texas. And I was like, okay, sure. And yeah, no, it was fun. I was asked on Monday of last week to go to Texas because I think it was originally supposed to be Vicky. Was supposed to be Necra, but then she had some COVID issues. Then it was supposed to be Vicky, and then Vicky had COVID issues. So end of the line was me. But it was awesome. It was awesome to go do a live event, see the fans. You know, like esports just isn't the same without fans. That sweater by Jack was also sick. But yeah, no, it was a good time.
Oh, very good, very good. Okay, let's start with talking North America then. We'll do North America for a little bit. We'll do some APAC for a little bit. We'll do some power rankings. It's going to be a banger of a show. If you're joining us live, enjoy. We won't interact with you as a
Well, shout you out if you subscribe.
Yeah, any subscribers?
Yeah, we'll do later. Don't worry about it. All right. So starting off, let's start with the finals of North America. The Gladiators have won, and remarkably, they have won the back-to-back stages now. I think, Jonathan, was it you that tweeted about this? I think I saw.
Yeah.
And you were like, it feels bizarre because there's been like 300 days between the stages.
Yeah.
But they have actually won back-to-back here. The Countdown Cup and
Technically.
now the Kickoff Clash.
Yeah, and there's only two other franchises that have. So New York Excelsior obviously did it in 2018, Stage 2. They beat Philadelphia Fusion, reverse swept them, and the Boston Uprising in Stage 3. And then Shanghai Dragons in 2019, 2020. So, like, the weird thing there was a Stage 4, but there was no Stage 4 tournament because it was, like, league matches into playoffs. So Stage 4 didn't make any sense. But technically, Shanghai Dragons beat the Shock in Stage 3. 2019, and then they won the first one in APAC in 2020. So I feel a bit about that, but we also had the Shanghai Dragons last year, stage 2 and 3. So, and then it's the LA Gladiators. So the third franchise ever to win consecutive stage titles.
There's also the idea that the one of the finalists from the May Melee is always the team, or the May Melee, the first tournament. Okay, this is the Kickoff Clash. It's the same thing essentially. Ends up going on to win the entire league. So there was a thread on Reddit asking, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Seoul? Is it going to be Gladiators? Is it going to be Dallas? And then they finish it off by saying, we all know it's not going to be Fusion, which is just that's just cruel, isn't it? That's just cruel. But did you? Are you, Connor? Are you willing to put your money on the line at this point? Was there a team that you're like, yes, they are going to win the league? A one tournament Andy kind of statement?
No, absolutely not. I'm not this early because I have much to the derision of my chat and fans of various teams that I've ridden my Fuel and Shanghai stonks into the ground. It's like a well-used beater. I drove that shit for years and it's finally broken down. I can no longer cope any harder. But that means also I cannot make any clear favorites at this point because it's too early. It's too early. And I feel like also this is a year where there's all the teams are looking kind of pog, all the top teams, honestly. Yeah. Aside from Fusion always can eat second, but like besides from that, like I think there's a lot of like really interesting moves abounding. So I'm not gonna make a call too early because also I've also gotten a lot of derision as well for specifically on push and cursing teams calling it too early. So calling it too early is just I have to step away. I have to step away for a second.
Fair enough. The Gladiators only, I think, lost a single map on their run as well, right? They lost only one Kings Row game, and then they came back. They played Kings Row in the finals, and they kind of bodied them, actually. I mean, that finals was not close whatsoever.
Yeah, and that was the interesting thing about it is, like, see, the thing is, I respect Connor's not wanting to go in too early, but this Gladiators team, I'm putting my weight into them. I think the reason I am as well is that they didn't even show the depth of their entire roster. Like we barely even saw a lot of arms skewed or space in this tournament. All players that can fill a lot of roles and a lot of holes in this team. They look very well coached, which I think is something that is a big thing for them. Because in the past, like they've had great players, but it feels like they haven't really found the right metas for them, all that kind of stuff. So looks like they've really got a good eye on what they're doing. I don't know. Obviously, you can't discredit like Seoul. Seoul looked absolutely incredible with some of their individual plays. I just think that the Gladiators have more depth right now, and I don't think it's a bad bet right now after such a good kickoff clash to see put your stonks into the Gladiators.
And also, they just got rid of everything, literally everything we were worried about, which is like, is Patiphan and Ants going to be good enough? Yes. They choke all the time. They're the first team ever to get consecutively reverse swept 2 matches in a row. They literally just bodied everyone at this.
Can't get reverse swept if you never go to if you never lose the third map.
and then they were like at the start of the season, it's like, they look pretty shaky. The Reiner's making some mistakes on the Winston. Just like Reiner might as well be the front runner for Rookie of the Year at this point because he was amazing. His flexibility and his peak play. It's hard to not think that LA Gladiators is the best team in the league right now because this performance was fucking crazy good.
Yeah, they also really, I feel, abused one of the things that we were concerned with a little bit for Dallas about, having to rotate Hanbin in and him playing, the Zarya for them, and then they go over to Fearless when they play the Winston comps as well. It didn't feel like there was too much flexibility with Dallas. They really tried to just hardcore hammer the Zarya comp home, and Gladiators were one of those teams, actually Seoul as well, when we talk about them later on, where they were wanting to flesh things out a little more. They played Doom comps, they played the Ryan comps, they played Winston comps, they played Zarya. If they go to Circuit Royale, they have space come in and they play the Sigma comps as well. They seem incredibly well-rounded.
They're by far they're definitely the most well-rounded team in North America right now. Mostly because as well, I think the biggest thing for them is that they also have, and I remember I was gassing them up, so I'm glad this portion, despite my doubting of them versus Fuel, I'm glad this portion of my gas up is correct, and that Reiner is definitely the truth. Yeah. He is the truth. So, like, that's a huge, and it's something that's also why Seoul, I think, is so good now. A big reason of that, why it improves so drastically, is because also Smurf has gotten so much better at the Zarya comps. so they don't have to worry about, like, it's so crucial to not have to rotate your tank out. Because if you don't have to rotate your tank out, you can pull out like all the different looks at once without having to bring in a new player. And so that's clearly one of the big reasons why Glads have had a huge amount of their success, is that they can play every comp. And it's why Seoul has also improved so drastically.
Yeah, go on, Jonathan. You're going to jump in.
It was kind of funny, all this comp switching. Like at some point, everyone just like, well, it's pretty much like rock, paper, scissors, right? Because if you can counter the Zarya comp, then someone else can counter your comp that's ruining the Zarya comp, right? It just goes like an endless compositional circle. It was fun. It was kind of fun to see some teams just like get completely just like juked. Like they tried to swap around like Dallas Fuel at some points. They were just like, oh, we swapped heroes like every team fight, 5 consecutive fights. Atlanta Rain on Circuit Real, just like, hey, we're gonna play Brawl, hey, we're gonna play Double Shield, hey, we're gonna play Doom. And some of these teams, they were just like, holy shit, like we can't keep up, we're just like swapping heroes trying to figure this out. And then the like Gladiators just like always knew, always at the exact time, like this is what we play here, this is what we play here, and they just executed flawlessly. So I think teams weren't really accustomed to this whole swap composition meta, and I think going into next stage, teams will definitely be more aware that they have to like be on their feet and have this stuff planned out in advance. Well, which goes to like the coaching argument that, you know, you also laid out before. It's like LA Gladiators are very well coached. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, Australian coach meta is what's happening here.
Yeah, we're geniuses. What can we say? So.
Jesus Christ. He's been on a big inflating ego run recently. He won Jaws game.
That's it.
We got the cast, the finals as well. Like, oh man.
Somebody's
not
really
liking this
Australians.
meta right now.
What do you think? Do you think there is like a single element that makes the Gladiators so good? Is there something they're doing a lot better than everyone else? Because there's the coaching aspect. The players are popping off. Like Reiner and Patty were both playing amazingly. Was there something that took them over the edge in this, or is it just a big amalgamation of factors?
I think it's exactly what Johnny just said. I think their understanding of what to play and where and how on top of that was better than any other team. Like Gladiators, like you just see them move around the map on multiple different compositions. You can tell they understand what their win conditions are. And that was like the big thing. Like teams like the Dallas Fuel, they knew what their win condition was on that Zarya composition and they did it better than everyone else, but they looked fucking lost when they tried to play anything else. And it was really individual ability that pulled them across the line from time to time. So I think the Gladiators, they just look very well coached and they look like they have a good understanding of everything that they were trying to do, which is impressive because they did a lot of different things.
Yeah. They the biggest player that seemed improved to me compared to where we were talking about him at the beginning of the year was Patiphan. Patty just went crazy, especially in the finals, actually. But also he was demonstrating an ability to flex around to a wide amount of roles. I think he was playing Mei, Hangzhou, Soldier. I think he threw some other stuff in there that I've probably forgotten about too. But the Soldier in particular had been so improved off the back of his prior weeks. I think when he was trying to use them, and he just seemed much better set up to be able to get vast value out of them. The flanking tack visors were much better timed in the finals, and he was just ripping through Dallas.
Yeah. Okay, so like this seems to be a thing. Like after the Gladiators won, people were just like, "Oh, all criticism ever was unjustified towards Patiphan. He was always perfect." And it's like, okay, well, there were a couple of really dumb arguments. Like at the start of the season, it's like, oh, he can barely get top 500. That's a fucking ridiculous kind of like statement, you know? But then, you know, if you want to argue with me that his stats were bad after like week 2, I'm like, that's not me. Like these are literally the stats. If he ranks like 12 out of 15 soldiers on like, you know, visor, damage done, dying a ton, it's like, no, that's were the literal stats. And you can't tell me that you can be like ranked 13th out of 15th in like a bunch of categories and be like, well, he's actually the best soldier ever. The stats are wrong. He's actually the best soldier while being the bottom in all these ranks. So at some point, you sort of had to turn this around into Patiphan was always perfect to actually like Patiphan. He struggled at the start of the stage, and that was a big thing for the Gladiators. You know, if you don't get value from your nanovisors, if the flanks aren't perfect, stuff like that, that's going to take a big toll on your team fight win percentage. So the real takeaway from this story is actually how incredible it was that Patiphan was able to turn that around, how he was able to iron out all of these small little mistakes, how he was able to nail down his rotations. His rotations on this map versus Dallas Fuel, literally perfect. He always came at the right time from the right high ground. And it was the same on Route 66, the way he positioned himself on the rooftops when they played versus a Reaper composition. Patiphan played perfect. So the story here actually is that Patiphan, yes, the criticism going into the season was perhaps a bit overwhelming and unjustified, but the criticism during the stage, it just made the story even more incredible because it proved how smart of a player he is to be able to understand his flaws, reiterate on them, and come out perfect right when it really matters at this land. So that's why I think this story was just so incredible.
I also think for him, the reason he took this win, I don't want to say the hardest, that doesn't really make sense, the best out of his entire team, because you can see throughout the season how much pressure he was putting on himself. Every time he died in the cameras, he was freaking out. He's just a very animated person. You could tell that he knew he wasn't playing as well. Johnny is 100% correct about what he's saying. Patty just wasn't good. I think it was week 4 or week 3, we did his soldier stats on the pre-show, and he was double digits in every single category in terms of ranks. And so he just wasn't having a good season, and he did a great job of turning it around. The thing that stood out for me, I'm not sold on the Patiphan incredible flexibility across the entire board. I think he struggled the little bits that we saw of his Genji early on. Maybe he can improve on that.
Yeah.
But his Mei was sick. His understanding of how to isolate Hanbin on the Zarya, his ability to hit those icicles, playing aggressive where he needed to. His Mei was really good as well. So I'm excited to see more of him. But yeah, I'm not, some people are like, oh, Patty's been the best DPS in the league and people just weren't paying attention. Is just wrong. He had a great tournament. I hope to see good things from him continuing forward.
But also, I think if you zoom out a little bit there as well, the guy's coming back into Overwatch after playing, 2 years of Valorant, and it's going to take him a while to get back up to the, potential that we saw from him when he was 14 or whatever the fuck. It's going to take you a while to get back up to speed with how things work in the team environment, getting coordinated with the rest of your squad, building up those mechanics again, that kind of stuff. So I don't think there's any reason to be concerned that it would dip in the next meta or anything as well. The pattern at the moment is too early to tell, but it seems like he's just getting the feel of things and is going to continue to get better with the Gladiators. I would imagine that those early season wobbles are likely to get ironed out more than they are to reappear, because he's going to just be getting more and more comfortable with playing Overwatch 2.
He should be. I mean, I feel like this is definitely a conversation we had a while ago about him, and that's where we stood, and it's very likely this is the case. So there's no reason to doubt it after his performance here in this event towards the finals throughout the tournament. It's all the issues we had with him have essentially been worked out, in my opinion. At least in this meta. Obviously, we'll have to see how metas, because also different metas affect different players differently. But considering that he showed so much proficiency on the Mei, I don't worry too much about him in a meta flexibility standpoint, because it's clear he understands other roles that aren't just me shooty, me runny. It's very clear that he gets, especially with something like Mei, which is a very cooldown oriented, teamwork oriented DPS hero to be on, and how good he played with the walls. So I feel like the Patiphan stocks they've been realized, they've been holding. It's a good time. It's a good time to be a Patty holder, to go into the boardroom, look at your fellow shareholders.
Who thought GG really changed Avast?
It really did, actually. My brain has straight up rotted because of Who.GG. I'm not going to lie. I'm just constantly, I'm having 20-minute calls with the guy that created it all the time. I'm just how could we optimize the site? I have no financial incentive to this at all. I just enjoy it. I just enjoy it so much that it's just fun.
By the way, Paddy's also, this is a massive win for Paddy, for Funny Astro as well, right? Because these are players that you think of as being, maybe thinking of them as great players is weird because you think about them both in very different ways. But Paddy's been a talented player with a lot of promise in 2 different esports titles now. Clearly a kind of, prodigal young gamer that's had yet to win something massive. And this feels big. Obviously, it's just a Western tournament. It's not necessarily Gladiators are the best team in the league just yet, but I think it felt huge to him based on his reaction. And it's also, I think it's Funny Astro's first thing that he's won in Overwatch League as well, isn't it? Because he's just been with the Philadelphia Fusion coming
He's a
second
Philly
in everything.
player,
Yeah. That's actually the biggest blow, is that he left Philly and then won a title after leaving Philly, and Philly gets second again. And it's like not even the same team, but it's a very funny storyline for the ultimate Fusion dick flattening.
I think this was another thing I wanted to look up as well, but I don't think I haven't gone through it. I haven't looked it up yet, so this is unconfirmed. But Shu might be one of the first players in the league who's ever won like a stage 3 consecutive years. He won in 2020 with Guangzhou Charge, 2021 with LA Gladiators, and 2022 with LA Gladiators. And I don't think any other player has won stages 3 years in a row, which is like a pretty cool thing. Shanghai Dragons, they won stage 3 in 2019, but that was not like the same roster at all. That was Dia, Youngjin, DM, Ding, Guguri,
Smurf must have done that though, hasn't he? Because Smurf won a stage in 2019, although he might have been on the bench for the majority of it. Yeah, in 20
last year.
Oh, you mean 3 consecutive years? Sorry.
Yeah, Shock didn't win in 2021.
Sorry, I thought you just meant 3 years.
It's a weird
overall.
stat. It's completely irrelevant. But I'm like, Shu, it's kind of cool,
It is. I mean,
it's
it's also
3
cool
years
that,
in a row. It's on a stage.
It's also just cool that Overwatch League is at the point where you can have these kind of, historic stats, and you can actually measure greatness against other players.
Yeah.
I mean, there are asterisks involved with a lot of the seasons and a lot of the stages, but it's still fun.
I wanted to bring that up because I had a couple of angry Gladiators fans tweet at me after I talked about them, because we need to remember the stage that the Gladiators won last year. Like, both Shanghai Dragons and Dallas didn't really show up. Like, neither one of them tried to be there. Shanghai and both coaches said, we're actually taking it easy. Shanghai didn't even qualify, I don't think, and Dallas did qualify, but you could tell that they didn't really want to qualify. They went 2 and 2.
I don't think either of them did. I don't think either of them were in Hawaii.
Dallas not ever maybe they lost in the qualification of it, but neither of them.
They played Rush Sim.
Yeah, and it just felt weird. So for me, this was Gladiators actually being at the top of their game, proving that they are the best team. Everyone was trying their best. Everyone was putting their best foot forward, and Gladiators rolled them all. So for me, this is the first enormous win that I've ever seen the Gladiators win, and it actually makes me believe in them, because after Gladiators won the Countdown Cup last year, was anyone oh yeah, Gladiators is going to win the whole league? No, right? Because no one else was really there. And as much as that's a shitty thing to say, and I'm not trying to discredit it, it's kind of the truth. While Gladiators right now, personally, I think they look like they're the best team in the league, and with the most consistency. So that's why this win is bigger for me, for the Gladiators franchise, than the last one.
You'll also have to wait for the mid-season tournament for them to actually play the Eastern teams, though, too, because they are currently only the best team in North America. I mean, exactly. that's it's not really an asterisk, because that was the same situation across the whole of 2020 as well. But it is just it's not winning the entire stage, something that happened last year, So. Let's talk Dallas Fuel, though. Dallas Fuel were in the finals. They had a crazy run through the lower bracket, just stomping through everyone. And I know a lot of the Fuel fans that I was talking to in the audience were hyped as fuck heading into the finals, because it looked like they had a ton of momentum behind them. They were just crushing people, getting into a flow state kind of thing. And the Fuel fans, home crowd, they're ready to see their team potentially win and do better than the last time around. And they got crushed. It just felt like the Gladiators stepped up again. They were able to iron out all of the problems. But Dallas, I think you thought, Connor, were going to be the favorites here in this tournament overall. Was there something that they still need to work on heading into the future? Is this worrying you for their ability to win the title, or is it just a blip in the road?
I think the biggest worries for Dallas are the fearless Hanbin playtime split, because you're pretty much locked into a comp. Hanbin plays Zarya. You can't swap to anything else. You can't play Ryan, which, by the way, we made this prediction in one of the other episodes earlier, how I was expecting to see a little bit more Ryan this tournament, and we did. We did see a lot more Ryan, because it functioned similar to the Zarya comp, in that you can play this rush style and this dive style, but you just control more space, and you have so much more point presence with it. And so I think that's something that hurts them, is that when they have Hanbin in, they can't play as effectively. And I would definitely not say Ryan, but definitely Hanbin you can put him on the Winston, but I wouldn't, or his Winston is definitely not fearless level, but he's locked into a comp style. And secondly, this is actually the first time I feel like Fuel struggled to get off they struggled to deal with the fact that their comp was getting countered. And like generally in the past, when Fuel is like what we know them for is their flexibility, their adaptability mid game. And Edison on the Reaper, it's not that this was a bad comp. It's not that their comp was bad. It's just Edison on the Reaper and their strategy was clearly not paying dividends because Glad's, besides like the Ryan, specifically besides the Ryan comp, but also specifically like most noticeably on like Route 66 and other maps where they were playing more of like that Doom dive style and like had more people spreading out. Edison was just not getting value a lot of the times. He wasn't, and so you would expect to see maybe potentially a swap because they had Sparkle swapping a lot, but they didn't have Edison really ever swap off the Reaper. And I think this was the one time that like they were locked into a comp, and I don't know if it was just like only practice Edison on Reaper. He didn't feel comfortable swapping or something like that. But like those were two key points for them to where it hurt them pretty badly, I think. But most noticeably, and I think that's really the second issue is because of the first, it's the Hanbin Fearless rotation because they're just locked into a particular play style.
Can I ask why aren't they trying to play Doom in any of these situations? Because we heard a lot at the beginning of the season, right? About wasn't it Hanbin and Fearless both had a good Doom or something? Or maybe it was just Hanbin. Maybe I'm misremembering. But
that was the rumor, yeah.
They have the ability to play Zarya and then Doom comps if they need to rotate around. And I feel like that would be good enough. Like, as long as you don't just get stuck on the Zarya, as long as you have a more aggro mobile Doom comp to be able to swap around to as well, I feel like that would be aiding them massively. And yet, we didn't see very much of that at all, did we?
I think it's just a meta choice, in my opinion. I think some teams early on in the season, like Houston, though Houston's a special case, in Atlanta, were like, oh yeah, Doom's the shit. And then a lot of teams experimented with it. And I think Fuel figured out pretty early on that like the Zarya comp's really, really good for them. And they don't need to play Doom. And so to me, it feels like they just kind of were like, we don't need to play Doom. Doom isn't that good for us. We don't think it's going to be like the comp to pick. And arguably, Doom was very strong for the Gladiators, but they were playing it more as a counter pick.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is that the Fuel would really benefit from just having a sprinkling of the Doom comp as a counter pick.
I think it was just a meta read.
Yeah. This has been something that Rush has done and Dallas Steel have done time and time again, though. Like, they always go down with the ship that they choose. And, like, for better or for worse, like, obviously it's worked for them in the past where they find something perfected and then no one can beat it. Like, no one could beat this Zarya composition from Dallas Steel except for Gladiators. Fuel literally bopped everyone else. They spawn camped the Shock. They spawn camped the Atlanta Rain. Like, it was a good comp. It's just Gladiators had the read. But they did the same thing in 2021 with like the zombie comps, with the Lucio Moira, with the Winston. They just like, they all in on these compositions. They get so good at it that no one can ever mirror them. But if someone comes out with a counter, like the Shanghai Dragons with the Wrecking Ball composition, they just don't have the flexibility. And I don't mind that play from Dallas Fuel, but it's definitely come back to bite them in the ass before.
Do you think that narrative strikes me as a team that won't win a title? Or at least won't win a championship, sorry. I suppose won't win a title is a bit too much because you certainly can get a meta that works for you. But at the top levels, going all in with a comp is just gambling on that meta being the best, essentially. And gambling that your opponents aren't going to be smart enough to figure you out across a whole season and a double elim bracket towards the playoffs, assuming that's the same format. You have to be so masterfully excellent and pick the right meta. That concerns me.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that's why Dallas have come second a lot in these tournaments, the way they beat everyone else and they look so dominant, but then they fall short eventually. But like overall, like we watched Dallas Fuel try and play other compositions. Like we watched them try and play the dive. When Fearless is in, their dive, there's something we know them for, has been really poor, actually. It feels like Gurio is not having the same level of impact when we're talking about these high-end hit scan Widow players. Their coordination with Fearless and like the other team, it just isn't the thing that we know and love from the Dallas Fuel. And they lost to almost everyone playing the dive comps. Every time they went to map 3, they went to the escort maps, Watchpoint, Gibraltar, and Dorado. I don't have the stats right here, but I would say this Gibraltar and Dorado win percentages would have been drastically lower than everything else.
Yeah. That's something I noticed. Well, I mean, everyone did notice it, but more specifically, just like Gurio, as much as I really root for that guy, and I think he has talent, like his Widowmaker playstyle is incredibly passive compared to like every other Widow in the league. Like there will be minutes when he like doesn't like get a pick or something like that. And I think that's something that they'll probably actively coach more, that he needs to be more aggressive and, you know, take some of these Widowmaker duels. You could tell even in matches like was it the Florida Mayhem when they played Gibraltar? No, I don't. I don't know exactly.
If you're talking about it was Gibraltar that you're speaking of, where or either that or it was Circle Real. It was one of the two, but it was pretty much he got out sniped. I'm pretty sure it was Gibraltar. He got out sniped by Hydron.
And Hydron was just like a beast. Like he really showed what you're able to do on Widowmaker. Kai as well had a really good Widowmaker on Gibraltar. And I feel like Gurio was just like instructed, and he's a rookie. Maybe I'm giving him too much slack, really, compared to other players I talk about. But he was very passive, and it just felt like their composition was just like, well, we're going to have fearless dive pretty aggressively with Winston, backed up by a tracer, and that's one part of our composition. And then the other part is our backline with Gurio and our two supports. But there was not this like synchronized kind of teamwork between the two departments. It was very much like the backline does their thing with Gurio being pretty passive on Widow, and the front line does their thing with the aggressive primal rage dives and like pulse bomb dives and stuff like that. But whereas you see other teams where it's way more fluent in how they operate, whereas like the Widowmaker will help put aggressive pressure to simplify the dive, or like the dive will set up the Widowmaker in a more aggressive approach to be able to help find those picks. It just felt like the Dallas Fuel in that regard. It just felt like Gurio wasn't really operating as much with the dive part of the team. And as such, I think that hurt their dive compositions quite a bit. So that's definitely something I think they'll work on.
Do we have to start thinking about the Dallas Fuel in the same way that we think about the Philadelphia Fusion? It's a
No.
It's
No,
a,
what-
it's
hey,
a
no,
hot,
what-
no,
no.
okay.
Whoa, let's just say no on move. Okay, you go.
Wow.
Okay, so yeah, they win the May Melee last year, right? Second in the June Joust, third in the Summer Showdown, third in the playoffs, second at the Kickoff Clash. They're so close, and yet they've only actually had one big win. And yet they look fantastic. They always look fantastic. And they've stumbled, what is that? 3 out of 4 times so far. 4 out of 5 times so far in these big moments. There's no pattern there. Sweep it under the rug. Dallas Fuel is still the best.
It's not that. It's just this is a question to comparison to Fusion. I think Fusion have a much longer storied history of that.
Sure.
And that's the thing. I think if Fuel have another year of like, oh, we can't win, I'm fine to put them in the Fusion conversation. But they still have the rest of this year to like win something again, you know? If they win something again, I won't put them in the conversation. But if they, and also there's still the theoretical possibility that Fusion could win something, in which case, like, then they would be, you know, they could be below. So
They just swap places.
I think you answered your question. They also won the May Melee. They actually won something at some point in their franchise history, which Philly has never done. Which
did you see the stats, by the way, of how many second place finishes throughout, like, in stage titles and grand playoffs and everything that Fusion had? It's 15 times. 15.
Yeah.
15 times, and the next highest is like, I think like 7 or 8. They're literally almost double in terms of second place finishes of like the next highest second place finisher, which is crazy.
15?
Yeah, it's like 15. I'm
How have
pretty
we
sure
even
is
had
the
that
stat.
many
We have 15
tournaments?
things.
I don't know. I'm gonna find it. I think it was like 15. It might have been lower. It might have been like 12 or 13 potentially.
I thought I saw that one and it was
find
5. I thought it was 5 and then the next highest was like 2.
No.
But I
No,
might
I'm
have been
finding
reading
it. I'm
something
finding it.
totally different.
I'm looking for the tweet right now. Let me tell you.
2018 Stage 2, 2018 Grand Finals, 2020 Summer Showdown, 2020 Countdown Cup, 2022 Kickoff Clash. That's their second places. And then they got third in May Melee 2020.
I'm telling you, it's
third
I
in
thought it was
2019
5.
Stage 1.
I think Connor's put a 1 in front of everything.
Maybe I put a 1 in front of it. It's very possible. It's very
dramatic
possible.
effect. He put a 1 in front of it.
Dramatic effect.
If you include third to fourth, it's 8. That sounds like if you place top 4 8 times and still haven't won. That's kind of.
I mean,
brutal
the
as
one
well.
that I saw was they had 5 second place finishes, and the next highest team had 2, and it was like a bunch of different teams. But that's like, you know, they're way out in the lead for all of these second place finishes. So
It
Yeah,
does
I
say
may
on
put a 1.
Wikipedia, it does say that they actually won a tournament, which was the 2021 Play-in East. So they won a play-in tournament.
now, but the playing tournaments had 2
That doesn't
winners,
count.
didn't
See,
they?
Philly fans.
Oh,
it's not that
it is.
bad. You
It
won
is
the
5.
play-in
It is
tournament.
5. I put a 1 in front of it. It's 5. Philly has 5, and then the next highest for a bunch of teams is 2. So yeah, they've had 5 runner-ups.
But that is massively higher because there's multiple teams tied at 2, multiple teams tied at 1, and then Philly are the only franchise out there with 5
over double
finishes. So yeah, Dallas Fuel aren't Philly just yet, but I'm starting to, alter my mental thought patterns around Dallas a little bit and be like, what?
Josh is trying to piss off the Fuel fans. He's a psycho right now.
I walked through the crowd wearing that Gladiators face jersey for the finals, and some of the fans came up to me and they were like, "Oh, you traitor! Fuel are gonna win." And I said, "No, they're not gonna get a map." And the Fuel fans were like, "Give us a crumb of hope." No crumbs. I just wandered off and went to my seat.
That was also you wearing the Shock jersey while Shock was getting spawn camped.
I had the harsher Shock jersey while they were getting dicked down, and that didn't feel as good. Okay, so I had a lot of fun at the Kickoff Clash. It was fucking awesome. It was great to be there at a live event again. The atmosphere was cool. The fans were cool. It's really sick that Dallas made it as far as well. Didn't realize the viewership was really low. And Esports did an article talking about this as well that I just wanted to take a moment to discuss, which was the viewership high for the Kickoff Clash was like 120K, but that was like day 1, basically. And then the tournament itself had 55K peak, which is way down at like a 69K peak last year for the May Melee. So that's a really big drop, actually. If you're thinking like 70 down to 50 for this tournament, whereas previously, all of the previous years, even though people say, oh, viewership's down, Overwatch League is dead, the viewership has been increasing year on year, apart from when we fell into a pit in 2020, when everyone just forgot the league was happening. But apart from that, viewership has been going up year on year. Last year's viewership was really good, but this tournament, people didn't watch it for some reason.
Because people can't play the game. People don't want to watch a game that they can't play, and that's the biggest reasoning for that, in my opinion, is that the reason people like to watch professional, esports is because they like to see how the best players are doing it, and when they're playing the game, they want to watch the esport. With people not being able to play the game right now, with beta being down for Overwatch 2, and you can only play Overwatch 1 right now, and if you're still playing Overwatch 1 right now, you're a fucking psycho. Overwatch 2, it's hard when you have a league that is playing a game that no one else is able to play, and I think that's you're going to keep bleeding people until that isn't a fact anymore.
Yep.
I mean, it's literally like true. The patch thing. Just like the Overwatch League is on a different patch than the base game, but like on steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are literally still memes circulating, which is always like, it's like, though granted, this time I can actually understand it from the general player base perspective. Generally, it's like hard, unbelievable 3-head concave 4-head thinking, but like this time it makes sense where I see creators being like, all the memes of like, oh, Blizzard loves the Overwatch League, and then like the general player base is drowning. Like, well, that's not historically true, but in this case, it is. I mean, it is actually feels bad, man, for the general player base, because like I think Custa has it right. Like, there's just no reason to be that interested in it, especially for months and months at a time when you can't play the game. You literally can't even like access. There's not even replay viewers. No one can even look at the point of views and the replays of players. Like, there's just nothing available for people to like further connect and create anything or engage with what's going on. So I think it's to be expected.
They were like 1.7 million people watching Overwatch for that first day of Overwatch.
That's drops, right? Like drops are.
It was
always
drops, but also that's
kind
like it doesn't really matter, right? It's like that's just the interest of people to get drops, right?
It's 1.5 million for Valorant when that released with drops. So it's like literally bigger than the Valorant release. And it just fell off a cliff so incredibly quickly. I was talking to the players as well, and the players were all super concerned about that. They were concerned about the viewership, they not being able to play ranked, that kind of stuff as well. Do you think it's still fixable if they can take a look at this, not make the beta go down next time, implement some kind of ranked? Is it fixable?
If you are someone who is on the edge, like obviously we're going to keep playing Overwatch, we're going to keep watching the league, we're going to keep making content and all that kind of stuff. If you're hoping that something's going to change, and I think you're expecting that there's going to be this like, oh, you're all going to be able to play the beta for the rest of the time, like all of a sudden, I think you're a little crazy. I think this year is going to have this issue for most of it, right? Unless they just randomly drop the game or they just give us the beta permanently for whatever reason. I think this is going to be a consistent theme, and I think it's only going to hurt the league more and more. It's just result of how they've done things.
Poggers. All right, moving on.
Yeah, sorry, doom and gloom. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Facts.
Yeah. Well, we're just cashing in on some of that doom cloud.
Hey, sorry, silver lining. When the game releases, I think a lot of people will forget about everything that's happened in the last couple of years, because
It's true.
you
Gamers
showed
are
that with
stupid.
1.7 million people playing. The people that played it, they say it was fun. It is a fun game. I think it's more of just when the game comes out, hopefully everything's better.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be nice too, because like if you've already owned Overwatch 1, you'll get Overwatch 2, and no one will have any money left because they spent $200,000 gearing up their character in a Diablo Immortal. So like they need something free to play.
Great game.
So they need a lot of money.
I noticed that there was a day in the Kickoff Clash where only Custa got a pred correct. There was only one pred that did
Holy
not get
fuck, you
boomed.
literally went from Doom of Overwatch 2 into this topic. I couldn't be more than fucking leave the show.
I mean, Jonathan boomed. Avast boomed.
No, okay, I'm gonna put some cope real fast. I technically got one pred right that day as well, but that is because I forgot I had put the pred into the Overwatch League Pick'ems website and changed my mind on my stream. So I just counter guessed myself, and I technically got it right officially, but I unofficially got it wrong. So,
Right, so your heart got it wrong, but you had previously with your brain got it correct and just kind of
my brain got it right. Yes. So really, I'm still correct.
It's funny, but it's funny you say that, because the
Jesus
only reason
Christ.
I went for the Florida Mayhem is because I still have resentment to the Washington Justice. Like, yeah, it was. I think the smart move was probably to pred the Washington Justice. They looked really good on day one against the San Francisco Shock before they got reverse swept. So I think it was a more realistic pred to go for the Washington Justice there. But hey, I saw it in the tea leaves, right? Like I saw the Washington Justice already booming themselves. But that was a crazy day of upsets. Like there was teams that were looking good ended up losing. A lot of things happened that people weren't really expecting. You can't even really. I think the only one that was crazy was everyone went for Toronto over Houston. Like I'm shocked that very few people preded for Houston, and that probably just goes back into the fact that Houston always choke on land. So they just decided not to this time.
They just decided not to. I mean, I mean that's.
This shot, by the way.
God, that shot is
a nasty shot. Yeah.
Happy
That
was
shot is
crazy
fucking
against
crazy.
the Shock day one as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was good. He had a very. I think overall, like he had a pretty good tournament. It's just justice, and
Is there anything
I have
to
also
even
entered the
speak about
camp
with the Justice? Isn't this just
I
the
mean,
same?
I will. I'll say something. I'm on the Custa camp now. I've had enough.
Yeah, welcome.
I've had
Everyone
enough.
welcome. Yes.
I've had enough of this team. I was like, God, I saw them play well versus Shock, and I was like, God fucking damn it, I'm gonna have to pred them because they actually look really good. Like, I'm gonna have to, because like Mayhem look good, but they don't look like they'll beat that performance. Especially because I think one of the big things that they themselves fixed was that they're, the one thing that I think that's kind of been holding back Mayhem a bit has been their DPS line. Not that they're bad, it's just like they're consistently good. They just never have huge peaks. While the Justice DPS line, they have Happy and Assassin who can just like pop the fuck off at times, and Decay if they ever play him. So like overall, I was just like, okay, well that's it. They'll be fine here. Like surely it'll be like relatively close, but like Justice should be fine. They shit the fucking bed again. I'm done with this team. They're relegated to like any team they're playing that's not like the Titans or Boston or something. Like maybe even Boston actually. Like I don't know. I can't pred them anymore. I've had enough. And I'm a traditional Justice hater, but I was like, no, just one last ride, and it was a fucking disaster. It's like, no, this time it'll be different. It'll be different this time, surely. No, it's not. I'm like an addict. I need to be checked into a fucking rehab facility to make sure I can never pred for the Justice again ever.
I'm so fucking tired of talking about this team. Really, I'm so tired of talking about the fucking.
No,
Washington Justice.
hold me to this. Hold me to this. If anyone catches me, just call me out. Call me out immediately if I pred for the Justice again.
Because that's my number one job these days. Is anytime someone believes in Justice, just yell at them incessantly.
I won't believe in them until they win a title. If they win a title, then I might believe in them for the next. And then
Jesus
by that
Christ.
point, the meta will change and they'll lose all of their games again, and they'll have just roped me back in.
I actually have the moment as well where everyone's Washington Justice hearts just like got broken. So there's a second clip I posted, Kurt, where it's like when they abandon all the space on Colosseo, and it's just like it it was what we've talked about for like over a year now, and it was just like that exaggerated on such a level that I just like got sad. Like I was listening to this cast, and I was just like, I wish I could be in the arena and just like grab the mic and be like, fuck the justice. It's like because it's this fight, right? So they just got 24 meters on push. They're pushing the bot. They got Primal Rage, they got Sound Barrier, and they have Nano against this Sora composition of Florida Mayhem. They got positioning right here. So Mag's gonna do the right thing. He's gonna make space here. He's gonna jump in and he's gonna start Primal Raging, just like pushing this Zarya Solar composition around. You got the high ground. You're like putting pressure on the Florida Mayhem with a Zarya composition. Look at him go. And they just like let him die. Like he's just jumping around there into like 5 different people, and he goes down. And so they got this bot pushing, and they're like, oh, our tank died. And they just run away. Like, look at them. They just run away. They just flee. They fucking escape like a fucking hit and run, but their hit was the main tank of their own team. It's crazy. And so they just give up all this space to a Florida Mayhem comp that they have Sound Barrier, they have Graviton Surge, they have Death Blossom. I can't see the Ana, but they probably have Nano or something. No, okay, they don't have Nano. So they just give up all this space, and they're just like, okay, well, time to take a fight on our conditions. We have our own high ground. We're going to defend our area of the map. And they just lurk around. They give space. They just let Florida Mayhem push. And eventually, the Florida Mayhem, they're just going to be like, hello, we have a Zarya. We use Graviton Surge. Your team is dead. And they just like lose the lead instantly to this Florida Mayhem composition. So like the fact that they wouldn't invest any resources whatsoever to get this Graviton Surge out. They wouldn't invest to get the Sound Barrier out from the Florida Mayhem. So instead, Florida Mayhem, they can just like fight on Washington's territory and end up winning this fight. And actually, they didn't win this fight, but they win the next one. Promise. Pinky promise they win the next fight. I promise. Skip forward, Kurt. Skip forward. Go forward. Skip. Go on.
You're too far.
I mean, they've already grabbed.
There we go.
There you go. Here's the one where they probably throw it.
I fuck it. Anyway, they should have fucking invested to hold that position. But instead, like, the thing is, okay, like, if you play, like, Winston head-to-head, okay, it's one thing to, like, fight on equal conditions, you know? Because, like, if you play mirror compositions, obviously you're going to have an advantage when you play the high ground. But if you're playing Winston into a fucking Graviton Surge, into Nano Visors, into Nano Reapers, you can't just, like, we're going to take a high ground fight with a Winston comp. Like, look at this. And they just like run them over. Like Washington Justice didn't contest them to get to this point. And it's just like, man, I don't know what to say. It's just the way they decide to rotate around the map. Like, why couldn't they just Nano Mag? Why couldn't they like push in with him? Why couldn't they like put some pressure on the Florida Mayhem? Like, they're so slow. They're so passive. It's infuriating.
Yep, well, you know what? Your wish is granted. We'll stop talking about the Washington Justice now.
Thank fuck.
Yeah, move on. I want an
bring up
embargo.
that graphic again, though? Do you have that graphic of all of the wrong preds? Because
Why do you hurt us, Joss? Why do you hurt us?
No,
And the worst part too, I got like 9 Preds wrong consecutively because then APAC happened, and I woke up and it was Jake Despair. It was actually Jake Despair when I woke up. Like, I can't believe it.
The Jake Despair emote is so good.
It is a great emote, actually. The Defiant Houston match is the one that's also somewhat interesting because both of those teams had, like, you know, a punter's chance of making it towards the. When we were doing our tiers, they were kind of like in the big middle tier, but they had the ability to punch up a little bit at this tournament, maybe. You know, Houston had beaten Dallas before. Toronto were looking fairly decent. What do you think about both of these two teams? Was there a team that came away with you thinking like, oh, they've got a good shot next time? Because I'm going to be honest, I just kind of forgot about them in the mess of, you know, the Dallas, Atlanta, Shock, Gladiators kind of stories.
I think both of these teams are a result of the opposite effect of Gladiators and like Dallas in a way where they just never really found something that worked for them like consistently. Houston Outlaws, they fell on the Doomfist sword, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world. I think at that point they were committed too much. And it works against teams like the Toronto Defiant who want to play around the Winston or, you know, around Hopper Zaya that just isn't very good. So it's like,
he did a PP hop. He did a cool little move.
yeah, he did the
Okay.
funny thing through the window, but like as soon as like they just couldn't do either of those things right. I think the Outlaws, also with Piggy on the side, it was fine. I just don't think either of these teams felt super comfortable at any moment throughout the entirety of the kickoff clash. I think they both had fine tournaments, but for the quality of rosters that they both have, it's definitely an underwhelming performance. Like Houston Outlaws, they could have lost this fight. If Pelican doesn't go fucking Giga Sicko mode and kill like 14 people, they probably lose this round, and they could easily lose map 5 to the Troy Defiant.
It was a bonkers play. I mean, this was a nuts play. And Merritt manages to get 2 off the rip or something as well with his tac visor, doesn't he? He kills like a couple of players here, and then Pelican just mops everyone else up. Iris hits a ridiculous sleep. It was crazy.
This was the Houston Outlaws having the individual pop-off potential that we know this roster has. And the Toronto Defiant just kind of falling over. This was a cool push moment. There were a couple, like, I know a lot of people hate push, and, deservedly so. I think it can be very, like, boring and one-sided, and, like, sometimes you're better off not being on the payload when that should never be a thing. But I hear it had some cool moments. Like, we also had a pretty good one with the San Francisco Shock. So
yeah,
I think it has its moments. Push, which I liked.
It does.
I mean, the San Francisco Shock moment was also the definition of Jake Despair. So that was also the definition of that when watching this.
Did you send me that emote? I want to see it. I can't find it.
I will give it to you. I will send you the Jake Despair. It's a classic. But I do think the biggest thing when I was watching this is that this is definitely, I did not feel confident about Outlaws because they are the Doomfist one-trick team. And they require Pelican to do unbelievable feats of strength, something that you would see in a Carney show to like achieve victory. Like this gave me no real hope for this team watching them, and like from this meta, because I think their player quality is high. It's just their overall flexibility, their understanding, like the integration of Piggy. It was just poor. It was poor. It just, they have such ridiculous player quality that it worked out. You just have brute ape strength to get you out of these situations, and it's fine because their players are just so fucking good. And then Defiant, I will admit, I think although has improved a lot when I've watched them, but then the rest of this roster is continuing to look like a Toronto Defiant roster where they're just papiche for no reason at all. Like they have player quality, except they actually can't utilize it. They have player quality that is somehow trapped, chakra gated. I don't know why.
I've been stuck in this like zone where I keep thinking that like Toronto Defiant, they're going to like improve week to week, but they actually don't. Like I have this.
But they just
that last sentence on its own is just incredible. I keep thinking they're going to get better, but they just stay the same.
No, but like for some reason, when I see them like committing to like the Muse Winston compositions, I'm like, yeah, Muse is a good Winston. Like they'll keep practicing this, and like they'll figure a couple of things out. And next week's matches, they'll be 5% better than they were last week, because that's how practice works. You practice and you get better. And then I'm like, oh, they're committing to the Hot Bazaar composition. I'm like, Hot Bazaar bubbles, they're pretty bad compared to like Hanbin. But like I think Hotba, he will like improve. Like he'll improve on his Zarya play, and they'll like be better at playing the Zarya composition. And they just show up, and I'm like, holy shit, did you guys just fucking play Minecraft for a week? Like, what do you guys do? Like, what happened? And so I don't know. I keep thinking that like Toronto Defiant is this like professional organization that that like keeps like reiterating and like improve upon what they do. But I think it's kind of over for me now. Like I think Toronto Defiant, they've just like been banished to be like a league average team with no like fun thing about them.
I think when Finale is your star player from the Kickoff Clash playoffs, that's when you know you're having a problem with the level of quality you have in the rest of the roster. Like Finale was sick. I don't know why they're not playing more on Finale. Like he was so good on Tracer. Like Tracer was good. Like it just feels like they're trying too hard to do too many things, and they're just not playing to their strengths. Like at least Houston Outlaws fell on the Doomfist sword, right? But it didn't feel like Defiant fell on anything. They just sort of fell over into the ground with no rhyme or reason of what they were doing. Like, it just hard to watch this team.
At least the Houston Outlaws. Sorry, go on.
Sorry,
Go on, Josh.
in Custa's head, falling over is worse than falling onto a sword.
Because at least you did something epic, right? You're just like, fuck it, YOLO, and then you just fall onto the Doomfist sword. It's better than just being like, well, we're just gonna do nothing.
That's
and
literally
die.
just the Always Sunny in Philadelphia line. Suicide is badass. That's literally what you just busted out. That's literally just what you busted out right
Holy
there.
fuck. Jesus.
Oh my god.
All right, let's move on from the mediocrity. I don't want to talk about
Sorry.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
on.
sorry. I just wanted to wrap up and say as well. Like, I actually, even though Houston they lost to the Shock, I was actually mightily impressed with actually like their play. I think they, fell on that sword playing the Lucio Moira composition, and it was so obvious that like it couldn't compete with Shock just playing like Soldier on like they just got exposed in so many different ways. But I really thought that like a lot of the time, Houston like they played up to their composition. Like I didn't feel like they just like fucked everything up. I didn't feel like they like dropped spaghetti all the time. Like I generally like Pelican had some legitimately crazy moments, and like I know he was great last year and like he got an award and everything, but Pelican from this tournament might have just like gone up a tier. Like he's been promoted to like reliable tournament carry that produces great clutches and like it does crazy shit. Like his Tracer was like crazy, and I was like, oh, Pelican Tracer. I don't know if he's gonna be able to compete with like Proper and Kevster and all these other guys. And like maybe he's not there quite yet, but he was at least like punching with them. He was at least like in a fucking fist fight, with them, and like really helping the Houston Outlaws out. So I don't think this was like a typical Houston Outlaws meme organization loss. I actually think that like they were pretty competitive, and maybe they can stay competitive and have some better results in the future.
Josh, before you cut this off, I want to talk about this because Jake, I'm going to call you out personally with the Jake Spare. I'm taking a piss on Thursday, and Jake walks into the bathroom and he goes, "Hey, Custa, good to see you." I'm like, "Hey, Jake, how's it going?" He's like, "Good. We've got something cooking for the Houston Outlaws." Yeah, keep this face up while I tell this story. He's like, "We got something cooking for the thing." I'm like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "Should I pred you?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna win." So I pred the Houston Outlaws in their first match, and they just come out on the Doomfist again. This fucking guy, if you see this guy and he tells you to pred for someone else, don't believe him. He's just straight up lying to your face. Unless the cooking up was just playing Reaper Moira everywhere with the Doomfist. I don't know what he was talking about because they just did the same thing.
Right?
But
That is technically
barely. Like, you're just doing the same thing except you run at them more. Like, I don't know. I got a bone to pick with Jake.
I got the secret sauce.
Yeah, he said he had the secret sauce. I was like, okay, I'm fucking all in. Sounds like Houston Outlaws, they've got their Scrimbucks bundled up and they sold them to me just to be kicked down once again.
You're so easily swayed.
I am.
Were just, it just seems like the key is to find you when you're most vulnerable. Just like give you a like, hey, do this. And you're like, okay. Sure.
Costa he's had Jake Despair and he's had Decay Despair, but he's still like the fucking prediction champion of the Watchpoint desk. This is why I'm old. It's just...
You just stop listening to other people.
Let's talk Atlanta. They were one of the teams that actually did surprisingly well compared to my expectations of them. They rebounded. They took third place behind Dallas, behind Gladiators as well. They were coming off the back of getting rinsed by Gladiators, by London, just getting boomed by the Rhine Rush constantly. They tried to mirror it. They failed. They tried to run the Doom to counter it. They failed. And they come into this tournament with, I think, a lot of people just losing belief in them. Just literally it vanished away, I feel. And yet they have showcased an ability to still get deep in tournaments here. I thought this was, listen, they don't make the finals, but I still think this was a pretty good result and a much, like a big performance coming out from Kai compared to the previous week.
Kai was very good, but I'm going to tell you who my actual, like, if I'm picking one player to stand out for this team, Ultraviolet.
Yep.
That guy hypersonic collapsed cheeks. I'm not gonna lie. That dude is fucking crazy. He saved them over and over and over during this tournament run. He was so fucking good. Which should be expected. Him and OG and Ultraviolet were like the best backline coming out of North American contenders. So it's not like a crazy result, but I mean that he is fucking good. He's an amazing pickup. So, and I think this is good for Reign fans, especially like I actually had a lot of belief in the Reign coming into this year. I think if we did our preseason episode, I had a lot of stonks in the Reign. I believed in this team. I thought they had great player quality. I was hoping their system wasn't going to change too much. I think they have the flexibility, and it seems like they kind of forgot all that with the Doom. Like they just fell into the Doomfish trap. It's like the opposite of the Fuel, where they fell into the Zarya trap, but like they just picked the bad comp versus the good comp. And I think they also showed that they had the flexibility to play other comps because they actually brought in Gator. They brought in Gator, and like, sure, I didn't think Gator played the best main tank I've ever seen, but it allowed them to play other compositions and to utilize different and to like play different styles. And they put Hawk back onto Zarya because they remembered that he's an off-tank player. And like, it's just, I think overall, like when you have this player quality and the ability to be flexible, they just forgot to use any of that flexibility. And it's a good result for Reign because they should be a good team. This team should be good. I don't necessarily know if they're going to be like the best team in North America, but they should be competing for these top tier slots.
Yeah, I agree. They should be top 4. I think, I agree with what Avast said. I just don't think they had a good read early on what they want to do. They like came in and it's only going to play Doomfist, but you just need to have like a little bit of flexibility around that because they were just getting exposed. If anyone played the game not how they wanted, if they ever got cheesed, like someone played Rush or someone, like even the Zarya compositions, I think Atlanta Reign, they picked it up a little bit themselves, but they would have, and they did get absolutely bodied by the Dallas Fuel, right? So it's like,
sure.
I think they are just such a talented team. They just need to keep themselves open to be able to flex around given certain metas and stuff like that. And they should be a top 4 team in North America consistently, in my opinion.
Yeah, the game you were just pulling up there, Kurt, the Atlanta against Mayhem, reminded me I need to put out an apology, but I don't know who to, but I think it was Sir Majed because because throughout we were sat down and some of the fans would come up to us and be like, "Hey, how's it going? Can I take a picture? Can I sign something?" And we were like, "Oh yeah, okay." And then someone came up to me on Saturday and said, "Oh hi, how's it going?" And I was like, "Oh hello." And they didn't say anything else. And so I was like, okay, weird fan interaction coming up. And so I was like, oh, are you rooting for anyone? Just like, get into the flow of the conversation. And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, that's already going off in a weird tangent. I'm not going to lie. So I just kind of sat there for a while. And they said, yeah, I mean, Dallas rolled us. And I was thinking, us? If you're not rooting for anyone, who's us? What kind of fan talks like that? And they didn't have a jersey on. They didn't have anything. And I realized it was a player from the Florida Mayhem. And I think it was Sir Majed, but I'm not sure. Because if you go to the Wikipedia page, doesn't have a picture there. I've seen him occasionally like on the screen, but their pictures don't come up frequently in the thing either. So
he was strong.
Yeah,
There he is.
I think it was Sir Majed, but I'm not sure. And I just hard egoed him. And I'm so sorry about that. I thought you were a fan. I just apologize.
To be fair, I doubt Majed even knows. As someone that's interacted, that's like, and I also have been consistently like seeing everyone's reaction to Majed. His personality is exactly like his gameplay, where like you're just like, what the fuck? like it's like not because he's just an interesting guy. He's like a dude that comes from like a very, I'm assuming, I think a well-to-do household, and then like he's just a teenage kid that's like, he just only plays video games, So like when you get in a weird situation like that, I feel like he probably didn't pick up on the cues that this is a weird interaction either.
But the thing is, just like, it wasn't him that fucked it up because he just assumes that I recognize his face because he's on the screen all the time, and so I just fucked it by just assuming that he was just a fan that come.
Well, the thing is, most people would know that they could tell when you're obviously clueless, but the thing is, I doubt he knew because he was just like, oh, it's just like this seems normal, so like.
Oh God. Anyway, hopefully, let's talk. Let's talk about the only other big team in North America before we move on to APAC. San Francisco Shock. They are 6-0, 5-0. They're undefeated at the moment in terms of the Kickoff Clash qualifiers. 6-0. But they didn't go particularly deep here. I mean, they go decently. What did they finish? 4th overall here. But for a team that was undefeated, and we were thinking about them being potentially favorites along with Dallas, They don't end up actually going that far, and they got kind of clapped by Dallas when they had that big head-to-head match that we were anticipating very heavily. They also altered some of the comps that they were playing, that kind of stuff. Do you think it's worrying for them? They're obviously a very rookie team, but if they've got a shot of being able to, run through the whole league, is this opening tournament result changing your expectations at all?
I think an all-rookie squad finishing 4th is pretty... minus Violet is not bad. I'd say that's pretty good. I think it's not like Shock fans. I think the biggest problem with this narrative is that what happened is Shock fans were trapped in a chamber filled with their own farts, and they were sniffing them repeatedly and be like, guys, our record is so good, and like we're the best team in North America. And everyone's like, no, I don't think you are. I think your history of your matches of who you played up to this point, like you've had a couple of tough matches, but for the most part, like I don't think you've like really played any like top teams like a lot, and like you probably the best team you played was Glads, which you beat, which was also Glads when they were still figuring their shit out though. They definitely weren't in like their peak form by any means. And it's very clear too when you watch the gameplay, they did not feel comfortable off, like outside of the Winston comps, they weren't as comfortable on any other comps that weren't Winston. Like they could still like bust out the Doom comps, they could bust out some of the Zarya occasionally, but like it just wasn't nearly as good for them. So, and in addition to that, though, granted, this was like this was really just kind of like a funny moment, but like in like the Outlaws versus Shock game, I'm pretty sure there was like 4 Ajax to beats, and Violet had like 2 or 3 of them or something. Like there, it's very clear as well that like
that was the Atlanta
Violet,
game, right?
Was it the Atlanta game?
I
thought it was
him.
I thought maybe it was, but either way, like one of the matches they had a lot, and it's very clear to me too that like this team, they didn't feel comfortable off of other comps. They've been just like a better version of Houston, where like their player quality has put them in like really good positions. And even though Violet has taken to the main support role, I think he's like good on it. It's just clearly not his most comfortable role still when you compare him to like other top, like, endemic main support players that have been on that role for a while. So I look across the board, and I think it's like they just have a lot to work out for this team, but there's nothing worrying about them. They had a good result. It's just Shock fans thought this team was the best team in North America, and it was some of the it was the largest Omega Cope I've ever seen.
I mean, you're saying that as someone who was convinced Dallas was the best team in North America.
But the thing is, I mean, sure. To be fair, that's fair. But also, when they played Fuel, everyone's like, "You're such an idiot." Shock's about to beat this team.
Right.
They Fuel pounded them into flesh pancakes. So like, it's just not. It wasn't even close. And they also played Rain, and it wasn't really that close either. Like it's just
I talked to the Shock coaches after this as well, and they said that they view it as like a good learning experience, honestly, for the squad moving forwards for the rest of the year, because it gives them some points to improve on. They to get some decent experience in front of a live crowd, and their record is still fabulous heading forwards. They only get 1 extra league point instead of potentially 3, which the Gladiators got. So they missed out on some push forwards, but the Gladiators kind of fucked up their qualifiers a little bit, so it all ends up evening out in the wash.
Yeah, I think Shock they went down. They never got tested on their dive. Like they went 6-0 in the regular season playing their like the Winston dive and that kind of stuff, but they just weren't as good at the Zarya or like Zarya compositions. They played a little bit of Doomfist, and Kluge is a good Doomfist, but they didn't lean on it very much, and they just sort of like didn't have that ability to change to anything else or like throw a different look at it, other teams, which is fine until you go up against, the 3 best teams in North America that have a lot of depth, or just their style counters you. Dallas Fuel's style just straight up counters the San Francisco Shock. And you saw in Midtown, as soon as the Shock switched to the Zarya comp and they got spawn camped by Dallas, it was like, yep, this one's over, because they just, at that point, they realized that they're in trouble. So I don't think you'd be upset if you're the Shock. Great rookie performance, as you guys said. They got points. It'll be fine. I think Shock fans, going back into the fart chamber that Avast was trying to say, it's fine to not win. You can't win everything all the time, everywhere. It's fine to have these sort of 2020.
Not true.
Yeah. Well, that's it. They've been living off success for so long, where all these other teams, like sometimes you're just gonna fall a little short, and like Fourth is still better than most of the other teams in the league. So it's
also,
fine.
they still could be the best team in the league coming into the year. They could. Their player quality is really high. They have a great tank player that should be able to flex on the other stuff. Like, there's nothing like wrong with this team. It's just it's a rookie squad, and they have a little bit of holes to patch up.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. Let's move our focus over to the East then and talk about some APAC stuff as well. Because the Seoul Dynasty, I feel like there's a lot of comparisons here in terms of, you know, them building themselves up in the off season, similar to how the Gladiators had some pretty heavy investment. Seoul Dynasty, they splash out on Smurf, have a really solid lineup overall, and they swept the Philadelphia Fusion. No contest, dominated for their first title for the Seoul Dynasty. They've been close many, many times before, but this one was... It wasn't easy getting there. They had some crazy games against Shanghai, but the finals were a blowout, and it's put Seoul in a great position right now. It felt like we were talking about it as if it was like a 3-horse race heading in, but it felt like a lot of these teams could have made a run for it too, because Philly actually patched their stuff up. They were like the 4th team that no one was really counting on last week because they'd taken a bit of a nosedive, but they picked it back up, made it to the finals. And yeah, Seoul looking fairly fabulous, actually.
It was a 3-horse race still. It just didn't include Spark.
Yeah.
It still was a 3-horse race. It's just one of the horses fell over and was replaced with a different horse. So it's, I think for this, I think we touched on it a little bit in the beginning of the episode, but I am now a Seoul believer. I rode my fuel and my Shanghai stonks, my legacy stonks into the ground, and the future is now, old man. And like Dynasty are in. This team, this team should be really, really good. Like they obviously should be. But Smurf proving to me that he can play off tanks like Zarya.
Yeah,
I'm like, this team fucks. This team fucks, and also, and Prophet has once again imbibed like 30 demon essences via the soul gems he's collected in his apartment, and he's just the best player in the world. So it's like whatever, you know, like you just can't. They're just so fucking good. This team is so fucking good right now, and they look amazing.
The DPS core of Prophet and Fitz have now finally got like a sick team around them. Smurf's obviously a legendary player already, like, you know, for what he's achieved with the San Francisco Shock. But you're right, he's building out even more. And they even started picking up some Rhine comps towards the end of this towards the end of this tournament run. They started adding some Rhine comps into their play that they hadn't been demonstrating at all at the beginning of the tournament. And they just started adding that in. Sure, Smurf plays Rhine. Smurf plays Zarya. Creative and Vindame look nasty. Vindame went dumb, unbelievable, stupid hard on the main support, playing Lucio, playing Brig, and the whole system. These players seem like they really stepped up when the pressure was on, whereas the Philadelphia Fusion, it's not that all of their players crumbled, but there were enough mistakes, especially I was noticing them specifically from Belastria in like this map, in the next map as well, on Eichenwald and Gibraltar, I think the next map was, where Philly were just making a couple of errors as they got into like OT, or it's like their last chance to touch, and they throw away a couple of ultimates, and it just allows Seoul to snowball because their players are just so comfortable. They have mad experience on this team now. I mean, even Creative has been playing in a lot of these big moments now, and Smurf's been playing in tons of them. Prophet and Fitz, tons of them, and Vindame seems like a player that's stepping up to the challenge as well. This looks like a dangerous squad. Definitely when we're talking about like the Gladiators being potentially the best team in the league, I think in the same way that the Gladiators are comfortable on a lot of different meta comps right now and changing them around, Smurf allows the Seoul Dynasty a similar kind of thing. Not that they were leaning into it at the beginning, but throughout the tournament run, started adding in more and more of that. And their player quality is nasty. This would be a great match to watch, Gladiators Seoul. That'd be sick.
For me, Philadelphia struggles from the same thing with the San Francisco Shock. They had a great run into the grand finals, but like I think their rookies they look nervous. They didn't play the same way they'd been playing in the past. I think they just got caught up by that. But for the same reason, if you're a Shock fan, as a Philly fan, as much as you came second again, there's things to look at and be hopeful about. I would expect this team to rally back, and this isn't like your one and only shot in the 2022 season. So I want to say that. The one thing that I am concerned about for the Seoul Dynasty in comparison to like the Los Angeles Gladiators is I like having a tight roster, but the question that I have is, are they going to be able to play everything? Like, let's say we have a hard meta shift. Yes, they've shown proficiency in being able to play, the Zarya compositions, a little bit of rush and stuff like that. But is that going to translate? Like if Smurf has to play, all of a sudden we end up in a double flex support Sig meta, right?
Yeah.
Like, which could happen with certain things. Are they going to be able to play that level? I don't know. And that's the little bit of concern I have for them, but they just look sick. And if Prophet's going to if he's going to be playoff P consistently and he's going to put up these level of performances over and over again, Seoul Dynasty can compete with anyone at any moment, regardless of meta, because Prophet just creates so much space.
Yeah. Smurf has been very flexible across his career. I mean, what has he struggled with? I guess he didn't look amazing on ball when that was...
He didn't look... I mean, when they busted out... When the Zarya Hog meta was in full force, he didn't look super incredible on Zarya when he played it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it wasn't like a struggle bus. It was just like meh.
Yeah, I feel like that's really kind of starting to become something that he's working much more on. I do agree that they're not like... They don't have the roster depth to potentially compete with Gladiators in every conceivable meta, but they've been incredibly good in what they've played so far. So I would give them the benefit of the doubt, to be honest. Like when I look at this team. The final,
do you really think it's comparable though? Like I feel like LA Gladiators, if they played against Seoul, I feel like they would just kind of do the same shit they did against the other teams, where they just like flex around and force Seoul Dynasty into like weird compositional matchups. It's like an honest question. I'm not saying like Seoul couldn't match that, but like, don't you think that kind of? I'm not saying they're one-dimensional either. I guess what I'm asking is like, do you think Seoul Dynasty could like individually they could match them because you have Prophet popping off like this in like big moments? But do you think they could match that kind of like flexibility of the top teams, even like the LA Gladiators or like the Atlanta Rain? Would you trust them to win like a comp map matchup where like we can go to this map and we're gonna win this type of map modes and with this kind of composition, or like
the only player
how do you
I
think
would
about
be
Soldier? Do you think
creative.
they're one-dimensional, or do you think that they're actually like a very competent, well-rounded, multi-compositional team?
I think they're fairly
now.
I think they're fairly competent. The reason I would say that gives me the most faith in that too. Listen, the Gladiators looked immaculate with it. They really just picked the right stuff in every place. It was different for Seoul. I think Seoul became more like understanding the comps and map picks and stuff as the tournament progressed, because they opened up just essentially doing their first game against who was it? Their first game, I think it might have been their first game against Shanghai, but maybe I'm misremembering and it was something else. Yeah, it was the first game against Shanghai.
Twice. Yeah,
they essentially had like a gentleman's agreement to just be mirroring Soldier Genji for the majority of that match. And it was the Shanghai Dragons that ended up kind of breaking that towards the end. But then the more series they played, the more they were integrating other stuff into their lineup and playing other stuff and actually punishing. The second time they played Shanghai, they really punished them for putting Void in. Like when Void was in for, I think it was the final map 5, they just kept Void and Fletter in because Void and Fletter had been pounding map 4. They just rinsed them playing a Rhine comp, and Void couldn't do anything with it. So I think the Gladiators probably picked up on it earlier. I think Gladiators have like a weak advantage in learning how all of the things work, but Seoul to me looked very competent at picking it up on the fly. I wouldn't put it past them to win a game like that. I think it would be very close. I might favor the Gladiators still, but I think it'd be close. I don't think they're a damn.
I think the biggest inflection point for them now is it's now that Smurf's proven that he can at least bust out some of the other off-tank heroes, so I'm feeling confident enough that he should be able to be okay and everything. It's more so what is Creative's comfortability outside of Ana, because we've seen other looks from him too, but I just don't know if he's like as top tier on, because really if you think about a lot of his Overwatch career, he's been on Ana a lot. So like that's my one thing when I think about like how flexible Gladiators is like, I know you can put Shu on everything. I don't know if I can put Creative on everything.
That's what we also said about Iris, and then he just went kind of crazy on the.
Well,
pick
yeah,
as
but
well.
I think, but the thing is that Iris, I think the thing is Iris had shown some other, like a little bit more. He had shown 2 looks in the past, at least. I've seen 2 looks. While creative, I'm like, I've seen like mostly 1 still. But yeah,
I think
fair.
we've seen him play some Zen in the past as well, right? Like I think the team played.
I think Zen and Bap. I think he's busted up both Zen and Bap a bit. It's just like not significant.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Jonathan, you posted a tweet talking about Prophet being the GOAT, and you used the term unquestionable now at this point as well. Give me your case for Prophet. Why has it changed when I think we were doing our greatest of all time lists previously? We made a list for each role, and I think we just generally discussed who might be the best, overall. But I think that from what I remember, the conclusion we came to was like that there isn't a definitive greatest of all time player currently. There's a couple of people kind of jockeying for it. What's flipped in your mind that you're so sold on Prophet right now? I think he would be the front runner anyway, but is it this extra win has just pushed him over?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a bit of a toss-up before. Like we weren't entirely sure before, whereas now I think Prophet just like grabbed the discussion. I was gonna say by the balls. Fuck it, I'll commit by the balls. It really did.
You're allowed to say bad words on this stream.
Yeah, but at some point I want to be quote unquote professional.
Like
organization. Yes. But it's not only is it like the longevity, the fact that he's been so good for such a long time since 2017, winning tournaments in 2017. It's also just like how he does it, like how clutch he is, which any given meta, you'll have like, okay, well, emphasis is put on the main tank in this kind of meta. Emphasis is put on like, the damage dealers in this kind of meta. Some metas is like, Ana biotic grenades are like super important, stuff like that. I feel like Prophet consistently just like makes his teams better. And when it comes down to it, like the elimination matches, the matches that really matter, like this guy just fucking shows up all the time. And he's so clutch. And I think the longevity, being crowned finals MVP in 2017 for making that swap to Genji in the finals, whereas he played Tracer the entire time leading up to it. He completely outplayed Carpe in the 2018 finals, if I remember correctly. The head-to-head was Carpe Prophet, right? Yeah. Just like a huge reason why Lona Spitfire won that finals in the first place. 2019 was obviously like the year he kind of like didn't rack up those awards, but maybe this is cope, but I'd like to believe that he was actually like always a good Brig or Saria when London tried to figure that out. Yeah, he was never like quote unquote the problem with that team. It was obviously like much bigger than that, and he played both Brig and Saria throughout that season, I think, and he was always like a top tier performer. Then 2020 Grand Finals, sure, if you want to be like, oh well, it was Roadhog meta, that's unfair. The meta always changes for Prophet. It's like, what other players always comes in super clutch and like dominates in this kind of way for their team to consistently reach top tier placements in matches like this? Like the way he's been playing in the Kickoff Clash, the performances from him the last 2 days in the tournament against the best of the best, like the literal best teams available. It's not like he just rocked up and just like kicked Vancouver Titans in the balls. I said balls again. Why do I keep saying balls? It's because like he's playing against the very best of the best, and he's just like super clutch and dominates the server like for 5 years now. Like that's just insane. Whereas others, they might have their time in other teams like Shock. Some of their players might have had their team in different metas. Dallas Fuel, Shanghai Dragons, like some of their players might have had their time in different metas. So I feel like Prophet is always super reliable, super clutch at the highest level possible. What more can we ask for him?
Yeah. I agree with everything Johnny said, and like the counterpoint to that as well is like, who would you put close to Prophet, right? Like, I've heard people say Fleta, I've heard people say Void. I think for the Fleta one, yes, he's been great, but in 2017, he wasn't anywhere close to Prophet. 2018, he was good on the Seoul Dynasty, but Prophet won, like in the London Spitfire. He was absolutely incredible, close to being MVP. Like, so Fleta kind of went amiss for a bit. And then also, like, even when Fleta has been having the crazy amount of success he has over the last few years, he's been surrounded by probably the best players in the world as well. So it's a lot easier, I think, to perform at those GOAT levels, while I think Prophet has been pulling his team kicking and screaming at times to like success. And obviously that's hurt his case at time to time, but I don't think Prophet has ever stumbled. And for Void, I don't think Void's been like Void's 2017, 2018 was also pretty amiss. And now he's a part of the Shanghai Dragons, one of the most dominant rosters we've ever seen put together. So
I mean, Void and Fled aren't actually even seeing that much playtime in the kickoff clash either. So if you
exactly, Fled has been pretty mid this season. Kind of same with Void. You can account that for them not feeling comfortable in the metas and the compositions. But like, I just think I don't see how anyone puts a case of anyone else, especially when you look back to the Prophet was the MVP of Apex, which was the premier tournament in 2017. So it's not like we're just looking at the Overwatch League. He was the best in 2017 as well. So you got to keep that going. And I think he's undisputed as well. Absolutely unquestionable, like Johnny said.
I have a name for you. And this is a player that has won the Overwatch League twice, that has been has a shorter career than Prophet, but has similar levels of accomplishments. Just won the Kickoff Clash as well. Next to Prophet, Smurf. He was like up right at the top in terms of when we were talking about greatest of all time main tank players as well, alongside like Fate, Super, you know, that kind of thing. I feel like this season it can't be really a race between them because they're going to end up playing with each other the entire time. But looking at Smurf's history, if Seoul Dynasty continue to win and Prophet's winning as well, this player is absolutely in the running for me because of those double wins that he was able to help push the team towards.
I don't like that just because, and this feels bad that you have to use it against him, but yeah, he was incredibly successful in 2019. He didn't play a majority of the dominance of the San Francisco Shock. Yes, he was a part of them when they, like, I think he was coming in to play the Winston in the finals of 2019 and stuff like that. And he is, I think you can make a case, probably the best Winston of all time in the Overwatch League because of his consistency throughout the entire time. But the greatest of all time, of all roles, of all things, that's what gets muddy when you talk about Overwatch because they have different roles. But so I think Smurf, for me, and as I said, this feels bad to discredit him for him, has been benched for too long of his career for me to be able to compare him to Prophet. In
the playoffs of 2019 and 2020, I believe he was playing a ton in the 2019 playoffs, wasn't he? Because there was a lot of Orisa, like, weren't they playing like an Orisa Farah Bastion comp for like half of their maps in 2019?
He played a lot in 2019. He was playing a lot of Orisa for the playoffs and such. But the thing is,
well, 2020 he played half of the maps as well because Super was coming in to play Hog for them, and on the maps where they didn't play the Hog, they played Smurf. So the actual playoffs, I think he's played like exactly 50% of the time. It's probably a little different than that, but.
I'm not saying he didn't accomplish those things, but as you said, he's played half of that time, right? And that's like, it feels bad because
he's got twice the amount of wins as Prophet.
Well, I mean, that's a little, you know.
Twice the amount of wins, half the play time, that works out as well.
Hureg.
Yeah, Hureg could be the goat of as well,
where's
right?
Hureg? Where's Hureg in there, huh? Well, I got a perfect stage. I got 10 wins.
Yeah, is Avast the goat?
Only person to get 10-0. In Overwatch League.
Amazing. And technically you didn't lose the finals because if you had been in, you guys would have won, right?
Won.
Exactly. Yeah. But I actually looked up those things, the Smurf versus Super stats, because we did that main tank list, and that was probably the biggest conversation, just like Super versus Smurf, who contributed the most to the Shock success. And I think all the stages in 2019 when it was GOATS meta, Super pretty much had like all the playtime. And then the playoffs came around. And that's where Smurf played a lot of Winston and Orisa, I think, in the 2019 playoffs. And Super was benched for most of the time. 2020, I think Smurf had that like MVP candidate kind of season. Wasn't he like absolutely incredible in 2020?
His Winston was crazy.
Yeah. So that was his best season career-wise, I think. And then 2021, I actually can't remember that much from 2021. I don't know why.
They played a lot of Rhine. They played a lot of Rhine, and it looked kind of a bit meh. I don't think it was a particularly phenomenal season for them. But I also think that Smurf, in his new role with the Seoul Dynasty, is going to be answering a lot of those questions about, like, you know, how great of a player he actually is. Because all of the burden is on his shoulders with that team. He doesn't have somebody else to lift the burden, really, or, you know, swap playtime with. And yet he's still been able to accomplish yet another incredible performance. And Prophet has been held back recently by his tank partner. You know, all of those amazing accomplishments with Gesture in the past are either in the past, when Gesture was an amazing Winston, or when Gesture was able to play Hog. And so now that they've actually paired up, this kind of is more of the cool thing to take away, is that the two to me, the two biggest GOAT candidates we have for Overwatch League are playing together on the Seoul Dynasty in a role where they are directly like pairing up with each other. The like Winston Tracer dive, the tank that pairs along with the DPS. That is fucking sick. That is insane. If you're tuning in to watch a Seoul game, you're watching two of the best players to ever do it, pairing up, dominating their opponents. That's fucking wild. And yeah, there are other people that, if they continue to like rebound this year, you know, especially the Shanghai players, if they rebound, they'll have an argument towards, you know, Fleder or a Lip or a Lee J Gon or whatever might have some kind of argument too if they end up winning everything for the rest of the season. But for now, Seoul is a fun team to watch for that reason.
Also, fuck. I mean, this might even turn into a discussion that I might not even want to take. Even though I am a tank player, like at some point, Smurf is like suffering from being a tank player to begin with. Like the room for expression and impact on the damage roll at the end of the day is going to be higher than a tank player or a support player. Like surely we have to agree on that. I'm not saying that like the stuff that Void did on D.Va for like in his career, like that level of decision making, understanding, and like the smart stuff to his game, it just like we can appreciate that. Like it, and we can, you know, when we look at Hanbin as well, like we can understand that the decisions they're making and like the way they understand, read, and play the game, it's like unparalleled to so many of the elite tanks in the entire scene, in the entire game. Like they're so good at what they do that they're so much better than literally the 0.1% of all players. Like they're just that extremely good. The room for expression, if you're a damage player, if you're a fucking
you're a simp for DPS players, that's what it is.
At the end of the day, the shit you can do as a damage player, the way you can carry games, and the way you can impact the results of games, it has to be higher, right?
Wasn't in 2019. I mean, flex support players also have had like metas where they are definitely the carry player too. I don't know.
Yeah, but
I think
you can't just be like, even in this meta, sorry, in this meta where it was like, oh, Ana is so incredibly important because you have sleep darts and bionades. You can't for the fucking life of me be like, oh, this guy uses his two abilities so well that he's so much better than all these tracer players who are like brinking around the fucking map with their mechanical Kovac aim and just like their 80% pulse bomb attach rate and the way they find picks every single fight. Like at the end of the day, like there's a difference in like how you express your skill. And I think being a damage player is so much harder relatively to like the other roles. But maybe because I have main tank aim, maybe that's why. Maybe because I don't have any inherent talent aiming. But I feel like when you compare these things, Profit, it's like I appreciate it even more because the shit he does is I find harder to pull off.
Yeah, I mean it's an opinion. I'm not gonna. No, we're not gonna go down this rabbit hole. I think, but it's a decent point. I think. I want to move on actually to talking about Shanghai and Fusion. So you posed a question, Jonathan. Here, would Shanghai have been able to beat Fusion in the? Would Shanghai have beaten Fusion in the finals? The idea being, Shanghai finished third, but they had such close games. They went to map 5 each time against the Seoul Dynasty. I guess your point here is, like, would they have been able to rally back and win? They did get 3-0 smoked in the upper bracket, though.
Smoked.
Absolutely smoked. But there is a weird thing going on here in APAC again, where Shanghai had incredibly close games against Seoul. 5 mappers both times that came down to whether one team could react better. And yet Philadelphia Fusion were able to easily deal with Shanghai, yet stumbled massively in the grand finals. What's the reason behind this? What's the logic? Apply the logic to APAC for me.
I mean, it's really tough. I mean, I don't even think there is like after viewing the clips, it's tough to really decide logic on this. I just feel like it's a form issue for those matches. Like if there is a clip, oh god, I have to find the clip. There is a clip of Fate jumping out of a bubble and dying and not primaling, which essentially defined like the series that he played versus like the series versus I think it was Fusion on like To me, I watched a lot of, like I said, I've watched 75% of this matches. I haven't seen everything, like every bit of it. So I can't be like, oh, this is definitively what happened. But 75% of the matches is essentially enough to me to be like, I felt like Dragons did not come into perfect form when they were playing versus Fusion. While when they played Seoul, they were in good form again. I still think Dragons also has kind of an issue where they have a similar issue to Fuel, where I think their backline and their DPS line are great, but they have a tank swap issue where they're having to rotate Fate and Void. And that's clear when you see the teams that have won this event and they just didn't have to rotate tanks at all. And they were able to like decisively change comps. They were able to like change their tempo like very easily on the fly. And Dragons, much like Fuel, once you have a tank in, you're committed to this comp and this style. And they were just less flexible. And I think when I watched across that plus just individual form issues, because I think of the ongoing issues with their various facility and the Shanghai situation with COVID, it just seems like Dragons just were not going to be in position to necessarily win as like a post-mortem. Not from like a view from initially I was like, okay, Dragons, I think they're going to be fine. But as a post-mortem, it was like, it's clear this team was not set up like to have the greatest success.
How much of that is public info? Like, have they tweeted or
they've talked about it? Yeah, they've
anything?
talked about it. They've talked about it publicly about how they have essentially they have like non-existent internet. They have the COVID restrictions, and that's why they don't have player cams at all. Is because they literally can't spare the bandwidth. So,
yeah, that's not
and
exactly.
I think all those factors, on top of the fact that they have to swap their tank players, and can't play like nearly as a fluid style, and just like individual form, because that is whether people want to talk about it or not, it is a very big deal. Your form on a given match day is going to heavily affect your match, and I think Dragons had good pieces. It's just they suffered the same problems that Fuel had. It's just they also had external circumstances and worse form of their matches.
Well, one of the other big things I think from this match that I took away was that the APAC teams, it's like what you were mentioning earlier, Jonathan, when you were talking about how Gladiators were so good and whether or not, Seoul would really be able to beat them. I feel like APAC was still figuring out the meta during this tournament. And the reason I say that is because Shanghai in this match had just come off the back of a 5-map series where they beat the Seoul Dynasty. And one of the keys to that was, in the final map, they put Fate on Rhine. And they had just been having like an honorable Genji soldier duel with a Winston the whole match, basically. And then final map, I think it's like Lijiang Control Center or something. They brought out the Rhine, and they ended up winning, and Seoul didn't really have an answer to it. They did the next time they faced them, but not the first time around. And then Shanghai began this match playing Rhine. And I think in their head, they were just expecting, we can use this comp. We know how to play Rush. Like Shanghai in 2020, I think it was, played a shit ton of the Rush comp and looked pretty good at it as well with most of these players. And I think they just thought they would be able to do this. And at some point, the Philadelphia Fusion swapped to a Doom comp, and Shanghai had no idea what to do. And I think this like... This meta of, it's not exactly rock, paper, scissors, because there's a few different styles you can run with the Doom comps that end up countering the counters sometimes. But there is an element of comp swapping, and your opponent's going to pick a map that favors their style, so you need to be prepped to come out on something. And Philly start on the ball. They do move to the Doom at some point here, and it ended up working very well for them. And Shanghai ended up looking too uncoordinated on the Rush to make it happen. And I think that kind of messed with their expectations of the match a little bit, because they weren't able to go to the like map strengths that they thought they were going to be able to, and they ended up just going kind of back to basics. And Shanghai's attack sides were just awful all tournament. Even when they played against Seoul and won, they couldn't get anything going on the attack. It's like they were really struggling to set up their ults and keep momentum going. And they always ended up like capping in the final moment and then giving them like a minute and a half to push to the next checkpoint. And they just eventually get ground out, even though their defense sides were functioning. So to me, my takeaway was that I'm not really sure Shanghai had the best understanding of the meta. And I don't think it would have shifted massively had they beaten Seoul and made it to the finals. You know, if they'd been able to win that 5-map series and it was a grand final between Dragons and Fusion, I think they were still figuring stuff out. They didn't really know whether to run Void and Fleder or Fate and Who Are You. It's kind of wild that Who Are You is even benching Fleder when you consider he actually had to play the Tracer a lot in the series as well, because they don't just run. They were running like Genji Soldier, but then they were also running Soldier Tracer. So you got like Who Are You playing Tracer a lot of the time too. I think they're just trying to figure stuff out right now.
I think a very important thing to remember as well, and the causation of why I think they're still trying to work out, is there's a difference between having 13 teams that you can scrim between and 7 teams you can scrim between. And I remember, maybe this isn't, I can't remember if I'm remembering this perfectly, but Danny might have talked to Shu, who had been talking to the APAC players. So that's why this is a long line of things of like the APAC players have been struggling to work out the meta because there are less teams trying to solve things, right? We have the Hangzhou Spark who are playing Diva. And it's like, well, like, why are you still playing Diva? That's been so discredited already by so many different teams. But in the West, there are so many different styles being played in scrims and practice that everyone's trying different things that everyone learns from each other, because teams in scrims, they just take from each other. When something doesn't work or when they see something that does work, they take it and they try it themselves. So there's more iterations going from all these teams in practice. And I think that is why the APAC region, on top of all the issues with they might not have been able to practice for as long or as effectively due to COVID restrictions, I think that's why they feel so far behind, because as you said, they're still solving shit. They're still playing random amounts of Pharah. Belisariya played Wrecking Ball. Shanghai Dragons are deciding that Rush is a good composition in the middle of the tournament. Like, that's why I think teams like Philly just sort of committed to, we're just going to play Winston Genji because we're really fucking good at it. And if we just play that to a high level, it'll probably work. It didn't, but it got them this far. And I think that's what's hurting a lot of the APAC region, is it doesn't feel like it's anywhere near as solved. And I wonder if that's going to be a consistent factor and a big result of what's going to happen in the mid-season tournament.
But also part of this question, would Shanghai have beaten Fusion in the finals, is it's not necessarily could Shanghai have won, it's could Fusion have won. Because if Shanghai had been able to win in that map 5, and Kurt, I didn't pull the clip for you, so I'm going to put you on the spot if you're able to find it, but it's map 5, which was Ilios in the Seoul Dynasty against the Dragons. So it's the second time that Seoul and Dragons had played. It's Ilios Lighthouse. Prophet goes just stupid nutty. He got a 2k pulse bomb. It's like the final fight. Void and Fleder have been brought in. It was actually the second stage out of 3, I think it was, because Shanghai won the first one. It looks like they're on the brink of being able to win 2-0, and they would have gone to the finals, and Seoul probably would have finished 3rd instead of 1st. And you had Prophet with an almighty clutch that just went nuts. It's kind of wild how thin the margins are compared to North America. It's not like Gladiators were ever in a situation where they could have ended 3rd. They just crushed the competition the entire time. Yeah, this is the fight. I mean, just look upon this and marvel. I mean, it's just insane. He does so much work for them. It's Shanghai in control of the point. They won the first round of Control. Smurf is on Diva to try and keep things alive here. Fleder's got a duplicate on the Tracer. I think he lands a pulse at some point here as well, or just misses it. Oh, no, he does. He hits the pulse onto Vindame. I mean, there are 2 players left alive, and Prophet's hit a 2k pulse bomb. Smurf's killed somebody. Fitz killed
if he
somebody.
doesn't hit that pulse bomb, it's fucking over.
Yeah. Prophet just hits a 2k pulse and just turns the fight around, lives the entire time, and went mental. They go into the final fight. Void's on Zarya. They know he's playing Zarya, and this is the first time that Seoul Dynasty try and run a rank comp, and they just demolish Shanghai. But it feels like APAC is on a knife's edge. It's absolutely bonkers. Another reason to tune into APAC, if you're a Genji fan, they've just got the best Genjis in the world. I mean, Zest Alpha Yi, Who Are You, Prophet. These guys are all just playing Genji at an absurd degree and playing a ton of it as well. It was so much fun.
Yeah, that's why I think form influences this so much too, is because of how much on a knife's edge the teams are. Form drastically changes the results sometimes comparatively to North America, where some teams, I think they just, because of the practice differences and the team differences so far, like the what we've seen from Kickoff Clash, like it's much more stratified, while APAC, because there's just less options and there's so much of that parity and skill is sometimes something different could change that day. Like literally it could just be the wind is changed differently, and like I was like, okay, this team's gonna win. And like obviously it's weird to break it down in that factor, because it's very clear that like Shanghai had problems. They did have problems, and it was mostly compositional issues and like playstyle like around those comps issues. But at the end of the day, they were like mere moments away still from beating Dynasty and going to the grand finals to play Fusion, right? So it's just like there's so many different options for these teams right now, to where like and the only team that was really out was Spark, because they just decided to collapse after like a great qualifier run.
I mean, they just got figured out, right?
Yeah,
the Hangzhou Spark, they just got figured out. Do you want to go there?
Yeah, let's go there. Let's talk about that. Hangzhou, they were the number 1 seed. Jonathan's hyping him up. Jonathan's like ready to fucking cash in the stocks. Got a tweet in the drafts, ready to go, and they just poo the bed.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so, you know, obviously oh God, this is gonna sound so pathetic for me. Obviously I had to, like, you know, be on the Hangzhou Spark train, because I started the train. I was conductor of the train. But at some point I was like, should I jump out of this train and just like leave it running? Because I did say on broadcast, and you go back and watch this, I actually did think in that Philadelphia Hangzhou Spark series the week before the tournament, I did say that even though Hangzhou Spark won, I did think that Philadelphia Fusion were the better team in that series. Philly should have never like lost that Route 66 overtime, that clutch that Alpha E ended up having, and like the second point of that. That was just Fusion dropping the spaghetti. It was awful. Fusion looked great on Ilios, the first map of that series as well. So I was like, yo, even though Spark won this series against the Fusion 1 week before the playoffs, Philly were the better team, in my opinion. And now you get to have that rematch against them again. I didn't think that Fusion were going to drop the spaghetti once more and lose to them again. So there were some worrying signs that Hangzhou Spark was like coming down and slumping a bit right before the stage playoffs actually kicked in. And also like again, them like playing these different kinds of compositions, like Ash, Mercy, Bernard was on a ton of Diva as well throughout the tournament. I feel like you get away with that kind of shit, especially at the start of the season, when teams are new, like they're trying stuff out. There's Overwatch 2, it's a new game. Like you can get away with being the team that always like counter strats or like plays the weird shit. Because like imagine like you're a scrim partner of like the Hangzhou Spark, and you're like, these fucking guys, like we're out there trying to scrim against like Winston Tracer compositions, like soldiers, like we're trying to nail our rotations, and they come out trolling, just playing like Ash Mercy. Like who plays this shit, dude? It's so annoying. And so I think you can get away playing like some weird compositions at time and win a couple of maps based on that. You know, they did commit to some degree to like playing Sara compositions with Alpha Yi, Genji, and Shy Reaper at some points. They did go back to like these default compositions at times, but I feel like teams like Seoul Dynasty were way more like introspective and like how can we take these compositions and like perfect them, and like how can we make the most out of these compositions. Where I feel like going back to the qualification matches, even though Hangzhou Spark got the number 1 seed, they were like the funny team. Like they played some more funny compositions, and that really like broke down the decision-making process of some of these other teams that like are trying to do their own thing. So I don't know if I'm being unfair here, but I felt like Hangzhou Spark, like the signs were there for a collapse, but I didn't feel like they were like I mean, they were the number 1 seed, but what do you guys think? I didn't feel like Hangzhou Spark were like the definitively best team going into this tournament.
To me, it just came down
Spark
to
could have lost at any point.
If Ash and Echo had ended up being broken, and like the other teams hadn't been able to counter it, then I think they could have made a run. But I think something happened in scrims before the tournament, because they, broadly speaking, abandoned that composition in the match, in the 2 matches that they played. They pulled it out a little bit, but the majority of this tournament, they were playing like they just tried to go to like Gushui played Winston in 2 out of what was it? What was the score of this game? Was it like 3-1 or something? 2 out of 4 of the maps.
3-1, yeah.
Yeah, 2 out of 4 of the maps. Gushui is playing Winston, and they're just playing this like basic comp. They end up losing those maps. Then they only played Ash Echo a little bit in their second series, and it just got kind of rinsed. Like, I feel like the APAC teams probably figured out how to beat it and left Spark reeling a little bit coming into the tournament, where they maybe didn't want to lean into it too much and ended up just kind of being
like they were on the
lost.
back foot in like compositionally.
Yeah, because you've missed out on your kind of ace card. Like, it's not even your ace card. You've missed out on what you were practicing the most, on what your theme was heading into the tournament. And that's just speculation from me based on like the scrim results, just based on like what they were trying to do. Maybe they were just trying to be unexpected or something heading in, but it didn't work. It ended up just playing into what Fusion wanted them to play. And it doesn't really lean into like Alpha Yi's strength, which is this crazy Genji. Although they did play the Genji, and the Genji matchup with Alpha Yi Zest was a ton of fun to watch.
It's also a volatile hero. Like if you want to make Genji work, you gotta be fucking on top of your blades. Whereas like Tracer Soldier, you can get away with like more consistent, performances like that. If you're a Genji, you have to like nail it. Your dives have to be excellent. There's no room for error. There's no room for like mistakes if you're playing Genji.
Can you also find the last map in this series? And it's the final fight in the last map on New Queen Street. And the game bugged. And it said the Hangzhou Spark had won. And so Avril and Achilles are casting. And they're convinced that Fusion have won. And yet the screen comes up and it just says Hangzhou Spark win. And I was so confused, and dude, credit to them, they had the read on it, because it would have boggled my mind. There's like 10 seconds left on the clock here.
Mayhem Rain game as well.
It did.
Oh, did it? Is that just a bug with push?
It's just it's just an issue with push. Yes. Yeah. It's just an issue with push.
Because it happened on 2 series, yeah.
I didn't even see it the other time.
Yeah, it happened Mayhem Rain as well, and it was like also mega confusing.
It's OT.
Because the Mayhem team started cheering as if they won. It was so funny. They're like, "Hey, we did it!" It's like, "No, you didn't." And they're like, "Wait a second."
Yeah, it's like the counter is exactly at 57.18. I guess it's I think it's if one team like ends it at the checkpoint and then the other team doesn't. I don't know, but. look at the Fusion players here as well. They're like all looking behind them. They're like confused, taking their headsets off. Like, what? Did we win? But yeah, this was a bit of a sad way for them to go out. But yeah, they were playing like Diva on Lighthouse and stuff as well. I don't know what to think about the Hangzhou Spark heading into the next stage. I mean, it's not really like the Shock, but it's a little bit similar in terms of like decent win rate in the qualifiers. Didn't do amazingly when it comes to the tournament, but the way they didn't do amazingly was different. What are you still on the train heading forwards, Jonathan? Has this kicked you off completely?
Who are they playing? I don't think I'm off
just a round robin. They play everyone again.
Oh, true. That's right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, if you ask me, like, can they play like Winston, Soldier, Tracer compositions like the other teams? Like, are they able to match Seoul on that? Are they able to match like Shanghai on that? I don't know. I feel like maybe if the meta slows down, if you can play like Sigma compositions or something, like if this Zenyatta kick is just going to like death spiral into some like Zenyatta kicking spree, and apparently that's meta now, like maybe they can excel on that. I don't know. I think it's a sick team. I think they have their niches, but the peak level of play, when you look at teams like Seoul Dynasty and their players, even Philadelphia Fusion, like you look at players like Zest that are just like incredible. I feel like if the meta is one-dimensional, I trust those teams to like really figure out the intricacies of those metas and like the positional stuff, the rotation stuff like that. Where I feel like Hangzhou Spark are still trying to figure out how to nail those intricacies, which. I don't know if that's like an actual thing in Overwatch, but it does feel like there's a couple of teams in the league who just like reliably try to outswap their opponents or like try to get matchup advantages, whereas other teams are just like figuring out the intricacies, the very small details. Like the LA Gladiators, it's so amazing because they can like swap to all kinds of compositions, but they also like nail the flanks, the way their like dive department and their supports operate and like stuff like that. That's like a different. It's like the macro versus micro stuff, right? I don't know if I can trust Hangzhou Spark's micro attention to detail when it comes to like getting like outplaying teams like this, like Seoul Dynasty, because they're at such a high level. Okay. I feel like Hangzhou Spark's more like a macro kind of team. That's how they win their games.
The train's at a stop right now, but it hasn't crashed. You're wondering whether or not to drive it off the tracks.
We stopped at a station, players on a break for a little bit, getting stretching their legs, stuff like that. Maybe we'll get back on the train and maybe we'll get chewing again. We'll see what the what the inflation data says about coal and how expensive coal is. You know, the more coal, the better. But as it stands,
The more coal, the better. Wow, Johnny.
Jonathan's really going for the US point of view.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, wait. I mean, inflation's up globally. You know, it's not only Americas. You know, Europe, they can't afford any coal right now. I don't know actually, but inflation's high over there too. So
They don't. I mean, yeah.
Jonathan's
sure.
really
Okay, let's
up on
move
the coal industry, so he's really been looking into that recently.
He's like, there's this hot
so
new
boomed.
industry.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm extremely boomed.
Yeah.
I'm very boomed.
Okay. Well,
Good time to be boomed.
we are going to do power rankings next after this short break. Yeah, we're going to take a short break, by the way. We'll be right back. Thank you very much for supporting the show. Recent members are going to be up on the screen. If you become a member during this, you'll have, your big name will pop up as well. And we'll be doing the power rankings when we come back. We're going to do global combined power rankings. And by the way, we have over 2,000 live viewers and only 600 likes. That's so sad. That's so sad. Give us some engagement, huh? Give us some engagement so that we get recommended to other people. Otherwise, we're going to die a slow death out here. All right.
For some reason, Avast, the new audio setup, we can't hear anybody except for me and Sideshow here. So it's just us two. I'm going to figure it out right now.
Nice. Okay. Well, that's a 3-minute break. And I'm going to keep talking, I guess, because you can't hear the other ones. Kurt's changed the audio setup so that it works a lot better, but there's a ghost in the machine right now. So he's gonna fix that.
Yeah. Hold on. We got some great there we go. This song's amazing.
You have a song?
This is a meme song currently, and it's also copyright free, so we can listen to it.
The copyright free meme songs for 2 minutes.
But yeah, I'm gonna get it so we can hear the other members of the crew. It wouldn't be too hard.
Nice. I appreciate everyone that becomes a member as well. We're we're still gonna be here for you even when the rest of the Overwatch ecosystem dies and burns, and Chicxulub hits and all the dinosaurs are expunged. We'll still be here plugging away. Don't worry. The 50k of you that tune into to Overwatch League will have some portion of you. We'll have some percentage.
Yeah. Oh, I know how to get them in here. I'll do it next time, though. Because it's complicated.
We'll fix it for next time. Yeah, well, there's also... I know that there's a bunch of news topics for this week as well, but I think we'll end up pushing that to next week, too, and we'll do like a preview. Yo, new member! Justice and Brian Davison, Pogpin! Anyway... there's some news stuff, Vancouver signing Deepay, Molly going to Valiant, apparently, according to Halo, and the Eternal announcing their move to Vegas. But I think we'll dig into those in a bit more detail next week. So if you're hoping for us to discuss that, you can tune into next week's show. We'll be doing kind of picks for the upcoming stuff, and discussing generally meta things as well, because I assume there's going to be a balance patch hitting, although I'm not actually up on that. I'm not 100% sure, but I assume that that's the case. So yeah, any of you Parisian fans, if FD God is watching and he wants to know what's happening with the Eternal, why it's moved away to the city of... From the city of lights to the city of gambling. Does Vegas have something like that, Kurt? You know how LA is like the city of angels? Does Vegas have a city of something?
Legal prostitution.
I don't think that's the official slogan. I don't think that's one that we can use anyway.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, all right, your 3-minute break is up. It's time for the power rankings. Are you ready to get your brain boiled? Oh, Jonathan's still not back. All good. Avast, what you eating? Avast?
I'm eating some sriracha spiced Thai rice crisps.
Okay,
Oh,
that sounds pretty good.
They're quite tasty, actually. And then I
Have you thrown your microphone across the room?
No, it's right here.
Oh, there we go. Now I can hear you again.
Right there, actually. It's actually, it would be very bad if I could throw it because it's fixed to an arm to my desk. So if I could throw the whole desk, I'd be fucking competing in the strongman competitions. I wouldn't be here.
Okay, so combined region power rankings at the end of this.
Real quick.
Combined. We just for the chaos. Is that why we've decided to do combined? Okay.
Purely for the chaos and the clipping abilities. I think this is going to be devastatingly difficult to do. Honestly,
It's going to be awful.
But yeah, do we have a pre-existing combined one? Oh, no idea when this is from though.
We did one for preseason, didn't we?
Is this one from preseason? We'll be able to take a look at how bad that one was as well then. You all mocked me when I said Dallas Fuel would be 3rd, 4th. Now? That's where they're going to be.
I don't think that's true. That's
My
wrong.
favorite thing-
You did drum or pound the Gladiators drum pretty heavily.
I certainly did. I was pounding on the Gladiators drum, and it came through. All right.
But it did not pay off.
I think we attack this from the bottom. The bottom is easy. The top should be easy as well. So let's attack this from the bottom. London Spitfire are not at the bottom anymore, but I think there is a question who you actually want to put there. Is it just the Titans? I mean, Paris, Boston have not been doing well either. Yeah, do you want to put
Can I say
Hangzhou?
that I pounded the fucking London Spitfire drum more than anyone. So that's my clout.
Okay, well done. Well done for that. You win this one. Who is at the bottom though?
Vancouver.
Is it just
I think Vancouver. That's a good 20th.
I think it's Titans. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's the only way is up for D-Pay. We'll talk about that next week. Who's next? How? I've just forgotten about these teams because they weren't playing this week.
I would like to put a name forward, and it's the New York Excelsior at 19th.
What?
NYXL at 19th behind.
I think
behind Guangzhou, behind Paris.
Yeah. Guangzhou, yes. Paris has more upsides. Yes, NYXL has had a harder schedule and that kind of stuff, but they've just looked awful. And I just don't believe in them right now. And I hope they prove me wrong. But for right now, I think from what we've seen from them thus far, I want to put them there. I don't know if you guys can defend anyone else. Guangzhou,
they're the most broken team.
Remember, the Eastern region, Guangzhou and stuff like that, they have to play against really good teams. The Eastern region is very, very good. So I think it's very hard to rate where Guangzhou is relative to the North American teams.
I feel like New York is definitely the most broken team in the league. Other teams, they're complete. They're well-rounded. It's like what's it called when you mold your own your own cups and stuff? Josh, you would know this.
Pottery? Are you talking about pottery?
It's like pottery. You can mold a pretty complete mug. It's versatile. You can put lots of different liquids in there. I feel like New York Excelsior, they're more an incredibly nice piece of glass, but just there's chips in it. There's a big crack in it, and it's not it's a very beautiful glass. It's a very beautiful piece of glass, but it's so broken and used and just not well taken care of at this point that it's just not there. So I'd rather take the great versatile mug over the broken piece of glass that is a New York Excelsior. So yeah, I think I agree with Custa.
I think you lot are off the goop. I think Paris should be down there. I think Guangzhou should be down there before you get to New York.
I actually don't think. I don't think Paris should be that low.
No.
I don't think so either.
What has changed since? Okay, last time we did power rankings was the last time we'd even seen Paris play, and they were the second worst team that we placed in NA. What's changed? You've all been paid off. They've got the gambling money coming in, have they? And they fucking paid off all of the analysts.
Josh, it's okay. They played the San Francisco Shock, the Florida Mayhem, Toronto Defiant, Washington Justice, Dallas Fuel, and the Houston Outlaws.
You're just saying those names as if they're all good teams, but they're not.
They are good teams. They are.
Washington
Justice, Toronto Defiant, and those are the lower end. They still made it to the Kickoff Clash. They didn't have to play against a New York Excelsior, a Boston Uprising, a London Spitfire, Vancouver Titans. They haven't been able to have any easier matches. And I think everyone is just slamming them as if they played against good bad teams as well, and they lost those. They haven't really
Okay.
I think the eternal roster, the eternal most recent result, they went to Mat 5 versus Houston. They and the overall direction of that team looks more promising to me than New York currently.
Okay. All right.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Please, for the love of God, though, the Guangzhou Charge. I mean, they're not looking.
Yes.
They're not looking great, right?
Sure.
No, I mean, we don't have to put the Guangzhou Charge underneath them. I just mean they're the next team. I'm happy to... Listen, I've given up on NYXL. You guys want them in 19th? They're at 19th. Can we put the Guangzhou Charge next, or do you guys want to be putting, Boston or Valiant or something down there?
I would find to put Charge. I'm fine to put Charge and then Eternal.
Yeah. I'll put. I think part of me wants to put Boston up there, but I don't think that's true. Like, I think I'm just off the group on that one. Yeah. I think you're right. I think Paris, and then I would say Paris, Boston, and then Valiant. Does that make sense? Or do we want to throw Valiant further up?
I mean,
that's a tough one. I think I probably would still have Valiant over Boston. Yeah, I think I would. Because the thing is, their most recent match versus Fuel, they looked competent still versus Fuel. It's just they were severely outclassed playing this Zarya comp. They still looked competent even though it was a 3-0. But
I agree.
I think Valiant,
so
when you consider the results, probably should be above them.
Boston at 16th, Paris at 17th, right? So we want to swap Boston and Paris here. Leave the Eternal where they are. And then we're sliding in London, or are London climbing even further up?
No, I think
London
have to be above Valiant.
I think Valiant. I think Valiant's above London. I think Valiant is. Valiant went to 5 with Seoul, Hangzhou, Shanghai. They took a map off of Philly, and then they lost to Chengdu. Yes, they've lost a ton of matches, but London is the least versatile team that I think we have in the league.
It doesn't matter. They're making it work. They're making it work, and they're inspiring people around the league.
Valiant, yes, obviously on the back of Sash and only being able to play Zarya, maybe they're going to get fucking rolled with that, but I think there is better talent on the Los Angeles Valiant. I believe in them more heading into, I don't even know what the next fucking...
I don't think that's true. I don't think I agree with that. I think Lone Spitfire, of course, they're one-dimensional, and all we talk about is the Reinhardt stuff. But like when they've been forced to bring out like the Hardy Winston and like Soldier Tracer and like Route 66 and stuff, they haven't been like incompetent like some of these other teams below them. They've at least like played a pretty tough game. They won one of those root games as well. I mean, I think it was versus Boston, so like not the biggest win in the world.
I actually think the London Spitfires coordination looks way better than Valiant's. I think London Spitfires coordination.
I think you guys are off the goop.
I think they're. I will agree with you. I think the talent level of Valiant maybe a bit higher, but the coordination for London is actually insanely good. When you watch them play that comp, they are playing it exactly right. And they're making micro adjustments, like mid plays, like making sure to split their Lucio with Sparker to go like get kills on the flank. They're controlling the right space. Like the tempo, the understanding of how their comp works, and the calls are great. They're really good. They're way better than Valiant.
Would Valiant beat London?
If
London would just put a spamming rush.
Okay. Yes, I think Valiant would beat London.
You still think Valiant would beat London?
I think, maybe if they're able to play this perfect meta right now when they can play the rush, I just don't believe that you guys are like, oh, they have good. Backbone on May is incredible. Hardy on Reinhardt is incredible, but they don't have any flexibility. They have not shown even an ounce of being able to play anything else. Like, and you can say the Winston was good against Boston, but Boston also don't know how to play dive. Like, I think Valiant went to map 5 with some of the best teams we have in the league in the APAC region, and yet you guys are discrediting them still. Like, I don't think they're even like, yes.
You've convinced me. I am a follower. Amen.
Yeah, like I just think London's going to get more wins. They're probably just going to buy into this rush and keep doing it. But remember, we forget about the times in which, did you remember Houston Outlaws versus London Spitfire? Dante just went into the backline and just killed Landon on cooldown. And like they didn't have an answer to it. They have no adjustment. They're doing this one trick comp. And if people prove that they can beat it, then they're just like, okay, I sleep now. And they just fall over. Like,
I agree with Custa. I agree with everything he said. That's right.
Tragic.
But give Valiant some respect.
I think so. Here's the things. I think even though I'm inclining to agree with you, I'm inclining to agree with you. You're negating the fact that London beat Reign in a map 5, which is a top 4 team in North America. In addition to that, they also nearly went to map 5 with Glads. It was close. They nearly went to map 5 with Glads.
Their way to success.
It's one of the meta comps right now. That's like saying if you're a full-time Doom team, you're cheesing.
Ever play that does not make you a good team. If you can only
that's like saying Dallas are a bad team because they just spam Zarya comps.
Yeah, but their comp is actually well-rounded, and Dallas can beat everyone playing it. Okay, the only team that the London Spitfire beat that was good playing the Rush composition was the Atlanta Reign, and they won in map 5.
Who did
and
Valiant
Atlanta
beat that
Reign
was good?
were fucking boomed.
Who did Valiant beat that was good?
They went to map 5 with everyone.
They lost.
That was good. That
lost
means that
against
they
every
can
team.
go
That's unfair,
toe-to-toe
Josh.
with the
Come
best
on.
teams in the world. If they can go to map 5 with every best team in the APAC, it's not just they went to map 5 with one. They went to map 5 with pretty much all of them, and then one of them was a 3-1. I can't remember. I was just looking at that. Like, Valiant, they are just so much.
Okay.
I'm willing to agree with you. I'm willing to
potential.
agree with you. I just think this is slight London erasure.
This is British slander. This is
shown up
hatred of the
versus
British.
2 good teams recently. They've shown up versus 2 good teams recently, including the one that just won Kickoff Clash, and their mastery of that comp is insane. But I'll give it to you.
Put the London Spitfire underneath the Valiant. Let's move on. Who are the next teams? I mean, can we put Justice down there?
Washington. Can we put Washington below Valiant? Okay, let me try and move Valiant further up again, just like 2020. Come on.
Wait a minute. He might have a point. Let him speak.
I got a point.
Can we put Washington under London?
Under London. I'm down. I honestly, I'm in with it.
No, we can't. Because the thing is, sometimes Justice can just play well.
Who do you think wins? Washington versus London. Let's flip it to your.
Right now, I would
I think
put
London beat
London.
Valiant and Justice.
Okay,
But
well,
you
fuck
don't
Valiant.
believe
Okay, that
that-
conversation's over. We're talking about the Justice now. How far does the Justice free fall?
I do think
Washington
London
lost
would
to
beat
Boston.
Justice.
Washington lost to Boston.
Oh yeah, they could go
But
on
then
to
they
Boston
beat.
as well.
But the thing is, they still went to map 5 versus like.
But remember,
Shaw.
Decay doesn't play anymore. Decay has not played. So now we might never see Decay again for the Washington Justice.
We're going to end up underrating the Justice.
Fine with me.
No,
Fine
no, we
with
won't.
me.
No, we won't. No, we will not. Put them below. Put them below London. Fuck it. Put them below London. I don't care.
What do you think
do
their counter would be to the London Spitfire? Do you think they would just roll out with like Mag Winston and
They
just?
just play Mag Winston everywhere.
Yes. They just play Mag Winston. Okay.
They
Let's
would
just.
lose.
Yeah, we have tier breaks, by the way, but I don't even know where to put them, man. I don't even know where to put them. Where would you even put a tier break at the bottom? Like, when did the team
Put
start
Washington
getting
16.
competent? Like, between 14 and 15? Do we put Washington in the bad tier?
I don't think it's fair to put Boston, but like I think it goes Paris down. I think the tier break is Paris down. 17. No. Sorry, above Paris.
Between 16 and 17?
Between 16 and 17, I think this is the teams that papeged out of the kickoff clash below that tier break.
Sure. You know what? Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. Seems reasonable to me. Washington underneath London seems, I mean,
Good.
perfectly reasonable.
They don't
Let's
deserve
move
it.
on.
They don't deserve it. They don't deserve any higher. They simply do not. They don't deserve. They are. It is beyond entertainment thieves at this point. They are soul thieves. They are the Reaper. They are the Reaper. They deserve to be that low.
Okay.
All right, tier break at Valiant, and I think then we start discussing everyone else. So a new tier break above Valiant. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think the Washington Justice is just such an interesting social experiment because with no other team are we this like emotionally attached to the success of their team.
Yeah.
Like we are genuinely like almost behaving like we're actual fans of the Washington Justice, but like reluctant fans in that we want to see them succeed. We recognize that they have talent and there is potential here unparalleled to all other teams that they're actually adjacent to in the power ranking segment. So we adopt this like emotional approach to their results and their performance that we don't do to any of these other teams like Paris or Boston or London even. Like
I mean, really, I think New York would be a close parallel to that because they have Yaki and Kellen.
But it's understandable
and, like,
to a
Flora,
point, right?
You know?
It's understandable. It'd be like, okay, well, you're asking Kellen, a Winston and Wrecking Ball tank, to play Zarya, and that's going to be like how you guys find success. You're asking Gangnam Jin to play Lucio, and he's going to be on par with the other Overwatch League losers and around the league with the Washington Justice.
I just want to
It's
remind
just
you,
indescribable.
you're talking about Washington again. We agreed not to talk about Washington an hour
we
ago.
did.
We said we would stop talking about fucking Washington, and we just keep falling back into the trap.
Rent free in our
If there
brains.
was-
Always.
If we have this fucking commute on the way to work now. So before we were always like in the middle of LA and like we had studios in LA and stuff. Now we're actually going to the Blizzard campus. So it's like an hour drive back and forth, or an hour drive there for me every single day, and then an hour drive back. I don't have a car, of course, but if I had a car and I sat like on my way on this fucking highway for an hour just listening to the radio. If there was like fucking Washington Justice Radio, I'd call in every single fucking morning and just be like, what the fuck's the deal with that? Like, I can't believe this guy still plays the hero like it's 2017, and then like the next day goes on, it's like Washington Justice 102 69, and then I'll be like, fucking assassin. Why don't they utilize his flexibility? I don't get it, okay? This is a guy who can play Echo, Genji. I don't care.
Well, they did sort of do that this weekend. It's just he was also playing Tracer.
He was just playing
Can we
Tracer.
stop talking about the Justice? Please.
Okay,
we need to
move on. Push it out. Okay,
We
so
need
London,
to move on. Toronto Defiant.
I'm fine to put Valiant, sure.
Toronto
I think-
Defiant behind the Mayhem, I think.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
Yes.
I think also, actually, there's another team here we've fucking forgotten about. Chengdu Hunters are just sat there at 7th, just chilling.
Well, I know, but I think
Put
the
him below
Chengdu
London. Add him to the list of teams below London.
No, that's all. I mean, yeah,
I've had enough
I mean,
of this team. This is another team that just fucking grinds my gears on a regular basis. They have good plays. They said, oh, we don't want to sign a Pritter. We're going to play. We want to have Daisy for the tank flexibility. And then they just don't even use the dude. We have to watch Jinmu just decide if he wants to play Overwatch for that day. And then they just fucking drop the ball. Like, they don't have any understanding. Like, how do you have an MVP caliber player in leave yet still manage to just suck? Like, it hurts me.
I mean, to be fair, this team
tier.
is fundamentally broken, though.
Yeah.
Once again, they literally can't play meta comps. They can't because they don't have a hit scan player that can play at the same time as like a projectile. They don't. They are simply broken. They are
even have
missing a
coach?
piece. Yeah, they have coaches.
Do they?
Who did they
Yeah.
replace Roy with?
I'll
They
tell
have
you.
Yaochi, signed in April 30th.
Yeah, they
Wow,
definitely have a
should know
coaching
this.
staff. It's just the problem
Sorry.
is they've gotten
That's my incompetence.
non-hunters wranglers. Like Ray is the
Yeah.
original hunters wrangler.
So he got
but-
promoted. He was an assistant coach for
Yeah, they
a
have
year or
coaches.
so.
God,
And they got
Ch-
promoted.
Chengdu
this-
are going to be in the Washington zone, aren't they? They're going to be. They're going to
getting
be another
close.
one of those teams.
I mean, I'm
We're
fair
gonna be
enough to
so
put them
good
there,
this
yeah.
year. They're gonna have a Pritter, and everything was gonna be solved. Every problem that we ever had with Chengdu Hunters was gonna be solved. But we're back in the Jinmu zone, where he just has like, if he's able to play the hero that he wants to play, he's perfectly fine. He's a great player. He's like one of the better ones we have in the league. Yet, if you force him to switch to anything other than like Genji Farah, he's just sometimes he goes missing, and it's awful to watch.
Yeah. Okay. So now that we've actually got that sorted, if we're looking
Jesus
at the tier
Christ.
above, and these are the teams that are actually mid-tier, I would say, except we're starting at 11, which is a bit weird because there's a lot of wonkier teams at the bottom. But I think Toronto Defiant, they looked like they were trying to push towards the upper part of this tier, but I think they've stagnated down to the bottom of it. I feel like they are now.
I think
at the bottom of this tier.
I think the teams that we should be looking at next to rank are Defiant, Outlaws, and Spark.
I agree.
Essentially,
Yeah, but I also think that the Sparks fall off in the tournament is too it's too like short term to really know what direction they're going to go in for the future. And they did so well before that you kind of have to give them the benefit of the doubt compared to a Houston or a Toronto. It's not like Houston or Toronto had the peak that Spark did.
I mean, I agree, but I mean, they also still have like there's still things to think about them was like not just like their overall meta reads, but they still also have. When I'm looking at all these teams, I'm also thinking about like, do they have to swap tank players around, or do they have a singular tank they can play all the time? And Spark is in that category of like they've swapped tanks, but so does Defiant and Outlaws, right? So
I would put Outlaws 10th and then Spark 9th. Does Spark deserve maybe on the basis of their qualifier performance to go higher than that? Like,
I think Spark should be above both Outlaws and Defiant.
Do you think Spark should be above Mayhem though? Because that really is another team to start thinking about.
No, I don't.
I think Florida
so.
is way too well coached to be above. Like, I think the biggest problem that I have with Hangzhou, Houston, and Toronto is that I think they all have great players, but they messed up coaching decisions at some point in the kickoff clash. So they're in like the bad coaching zone, in a way of like they sort of went down with that thing. I think Florida, they have less talent than those other teams, but I think they are a more well-rounded team, at least what they showed in the kickoff clash.
Thing is, but I don't think their talent is still like. I think the biggest thing is that I think their two biggest talents are someone and interestingly enough, Majed. It's just Majed plays Baboon Ana.
He
And,
needs to be able to dial it back a little bit every now
Yeah,
and then.
he
right?
plays
Yeah.
Baboon Ana. He actually plays up straight up zoo enclosure Ana. Like, it is crazy when you watch the shit that he's doing with Animo. Like, Animo is like holding on for dear life, swinging his flail, while Majed is suddenly in the back line. He's like desperately like, get back, like please stop, and like trying to desperately keep him alive. And Majed's just in the floor jumping an aid and just dying. Like, Animo is just doing everything he can. It's like I see the fear in his eyes as a main support player trying to keep Majed alive. I see it. I see the fear.
But that's what I'm saying. The Florida Mayhem, they're a good team that are certainly punching upwards. Where did they finish in this tournament? Like 5th, 6th? Is that what they got?
Yeah, 5th or 6th. Yeah, I think.
And I don't think so. They tied with the. Who did they tie with? Who's the
Houston was
right.
the same team that won.
Yeah.
And and the thing is, their results though I find were pretty.
But their results in the qualifier were not as good as the Sparks results in the qualifier.
No.
Yeah.
It feels weird to put Spark below Mayhem. I feel like Mayhem might prove to be better, but from what we've watched this year, surely the Spark have actually demonstrated
But also we have
caliber.
to take the snapshot of time here, right? And the snapshot of time is Mayhem looks like a far more well-rounded, better coached team currently, and also I believe in their trajectory currently more so than I do the Sparks.
I agree with you all the way up until you
yeah.
believe in the trajectory. Sparks roster is like way better in my opinion.
But the problem with Sparks
than the
roster is they still have a
Florida
fundamental
Mayhem.
flaw where they have to rotate tanks.
Yeah,
fundamental flaw where they have to
and
rotate
Cruciate
tanks.
hasn't been good this season. Like I agree,
No, yeah.
that is
So-
a big problem for them.
What are you thinking then? Connor wants to put Mayhem above Jonathan Custa.
I don't think I'm quite ready yet. I think that Florida Mayhem, they're so close. They're so close. They really are. And it's not even about the Hangzhou Spark. It's just about the Florida Mayhem overall in their season so far. Like, if you look at who they've beaten so far, they've beaten Paris, Vancouver, New York, and Washington Justice twice.
Yeah.
They lost to the Houston Outlaws. In a series that I think they should have won, I think Florida Mayhem was the better team in that series against the Outlaws.
And also, they've had
But-
two very close matches, especially the match versus Fuel. Like, they probably would have gone to map 5 versus Fuel if Fielder hadn't backcapped twice.
But that's
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't think they've done it yet. I don't think they've done it yet to be a top 8 team.
I think also Florida, I think they looked better than they were as well because they won that Gibraltar in such like an amazing fashion, and like Hydron stands out so much on the Widowmaker. But like the Reinhardt comp on Lijiang Tower versus Dallas was so fucking bad. Like
That's
it
true.
really
That
was.
was
It was
bad.
so fucking bad. And if you're asking like someone to play like Zarya comps against some of these other teams in the league, I'm like, can you get away with doing that reliably? I think that someone's been a good Winston so far, and even when he went up against like the Justice, I think that he performed better than Mag at some points in the series. But like, I don't think someone should be in like the Rookie of the Year conversation like some other people have suggested. Like, I don't think he's that good. So I think the Florida Mayhem is like a decent team, but I would even like put the Outlaws above them because like I don't trust in them that much yet.
No, I can't allow that. I'll allow you to put Spark above them. I can't allow
I think
the
Spark
Outlaws.
to 8. I think Spark to 8 is the I think we agree to that.
But I
And
do
then
think there's a tier
break.
break between 7 and 8, right? Because any
Yes,
team we're
absolutely.
discussing above that is like potential contender to win a tournament kind of team. Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right.
All of those teams have the potential, I think, to go either super deep or win a tournament. So let's.
Yeah.
I would like to start going from the top now because I feel like that's going to make things a lot easier when we're talking about this top tier. Who is currently the best team in the league? I think most of us.
It's either
are on
Dynasty
the
or
Gladiators.
Glads. It's either Dynasty or Glads. It's one of the two.
And then, even talking about Dynasty, I mean, when we were having our APAC discussion, they were inches away from finishing 3rd. And then it would have probably been Fusion winning and Dragons in 2nd. So, yeah, you're still set with Seoul Dynasty in 2nd place?
Hear me out. I want to then put Fusion 3 and then Dallas 4. That's how
Fusion
I think
3.
about it. Yeah, I think
Whoa.
Fusion. I think we discredit a lot of what Fusion did because they got blown out in the grand finals. But I think you can say the same thing about the Dallas Fuel, and that's why I want to. But I think Fusion. I like the way Fusion plays more than
Fusion also
Dallas
had
Fuel.
a much rougher like qualifier,
Well,
right?
yeah, they did.
They went.
I mean, they
went
lost
up and then
map
they went
5 to Spark, and they also lost to Hunters, and then they also lost to Dynasty 3-0 before that. While like, I don't really think there's personally, I would much rather do I mean, I would be willing to do Fuel 3. I mean, man.
Would you rather have Shanghai up there? Right.
Here's the thing. I think I'm fine to give Glads because I think they're so well rounded. Dynasty I think should be 2. I'd almost rather have like. It's hard. Like,
it's so hard cross region, dude.
It's so fucking hard. But I think I'd rather have Fuel and Dragon still above them both.
Really?
I don't know about Shanghai. I might lean Dallas 3, Philly 4, but I don't know about Dragons.
I could be sold on that. I just didn't like the versatility of Dallas. They look so bad on the dive. Like, that's my big problem with them.
I mean, did it look that bad though?
I didn't think they looked awful.
No,
I just think
I think if they were playing dive, if they're playing Winston maps, they lose to Fusion and Dragons. But if they're
100%.
playing Zarya maps, I think they beat them both. And the question to me is, like, actually Shanghai and Fusion have demonstrated more versatility than Dallas have. So
agree.
The thing is, though, it didn't matter for Dallas in North America until they met the Gladiators. They
no,
could
actually,
just kind
you know
of
what?
roll
I'm willing
through
to put
everybody.
Fuel down. I'm willing to put Fuel down only because of this one deciding factor, and it's because I feel like their hit scan player is less explosive. I think Gurio, the way they utilize him, I would rather have Lip or like
Lip went crazy. I think it's so close because you could make an argument that Shanghai should be above Fuel as well. I think.
See,
I think so too.
On about the point. I think you guys are not doing the Dallas Fuel justice because you're emphasizing too much about like the wrong things or like the weaknesses of them. So like, yeah, they weren't as versatile because they didn't have to be. Like they straight up dominated some of these teams with the Zara compositions. Like it was like their match against the Atlanta Reign, like they were just fucking playing with their food. And that was the Atlanta Reign, who were like the 3rd best team in the region. I mean, maybe you'd want to go back and watch that Shock Atlanta series one more time to decide that. But like the way they just like tore a team like Atlanta Reign apart, they like completed that Colosseo map. And some of that was Kai's fault for playing Widowmaker. Again, like I don't hate the Widowmaker pick off the gates necessarily, but it did eventually because it didn't work out. It did feed to some momentum to Dallas Star composition and their ultimate generation, right? But just like the way Dallas Fuel dominated on Midtown, the way they dominated on Colosseo with that composition, up until the Gladiators, no one had really like exposed the Dallas Fuel in that kind of way. So if you want to beat the Dallas Fuel, you're essentially saying that some of these teams will be able to like replicate that their positioning, their player rotations will be able to just like tear these Zara compositions apart. And I think that's harder said than done. I don't think a lot of teams around the league could just like rock up like Patiphan and just like perfect flanks, great nanovisors, Kevster Tracer. I think what Gladiators did, and it's part of why I respect them so much for their stage title, like what they did was incredibly hard. Not only were they very versatile and always had like the superior composition, but they executed really well. Like their micro stuff was off the charts. So I don't think it's as easy beating the Dallas Fuel as people make it out to be because the finals itself was so one-sided. That's credit to the LA Gladiators more than it like to fault of the Dallas Fuel, in my opinion.
I agree with that, but I also think that North America in this tournament had Gladiators easily at the top, but then there was also a gap between Dallas and the next best team. They tore through everybody else. And I just don't think the same's the case in APAC. And I'm trying to think, like, who did Dallas beat that's as good as a Philly or a Shanghai? And I don't think... I mean, maybe Shock is equivalent level, but Shock doesn't play as many different varieties.
But also you have to think about Shanghai's overall.
Dallas 3-0 Shock and 3-1 Atlanta.
But yeah, they dominated it. That's only playing Shanghai's Zyacom, right? Like, are we talking about just in this meta? If we're talking just in this meta, Dallas is above, like, I think those teams, especially because I think the Zyacomps would beat the dive of the Philadelphia Fusion and the Shanghai Dragons on most maps because there's not many dive maps in the meta. But if we're looking forward, let's say the Zyacomp, like, let's say all of a sudden we go to the next patch and Zyacomp is just bad, right? Like, for whatever reason, it's no longer available. Dallas do not have many good looks on other things. Like, they just don't. And that's my fear of the Fuel of, like, I'm not doubting their ability to find something else and make it their own, but I'm just saying I really like the versatility of these other teams. I like Shanghai.
That's what I think
like
they'll
Philly.
do, though. I think I would trust the Dallas Fuel to take something and make it their own. If you were like entirety of stage 2, Dallas Fuel are just going to grind out Doomfist compositions. And like, let's not look, I don't want to theorize about like the viability of Doomfist, but if they decided to do that choice to hone in on one composition like that, which they've tended to do, I would trust them to play it so fucking well that like it would be overpowering to some degree. So I guess I have that faith in them to adjust to other metas.
I'm also just thinking about more of the Dragons
like the
matches.
Wrecking Ball last season. Sorry.
And I think Dragons had enough maps where they looked like they were creating the errors rather than it was forced by their opponents, that I think they probably should be in 5th, actually, thinking it over. Because they just had so many moments where they looked a little limp. Their attack snowballs couldn't get going. They like had a ridiculous C9 where it just looked like their brains had turned off. You just really didn't see those moments by Dallas. Dallas had to be outclassed to be beaten. Whereas I think Dragons were beating themselves at various points too. I think this is fairly reasonable in terms of a ranking for 1 through 7.
I think we might be underrating Shock a little bit, but I can't give you justification why I believe that. Like, I feel like Shock potentially could step up and they could play above like a bunch of these teams, but I can't defend it.
Are we underrating Atlanta? Playing Soracom's good. Playing Kai's Widowmaker on escort maps.
I think they just lost too many
Doomfist comps
matches for me to.
Yeah,
I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this, honestly. Yeah.
I mean,
that's
above the
Shock
Shock to start with.
you could.
We
They
can't
beat
put
the
Shock
Shock.
7. We can't put Shock 7.
They beat the Shock 3-1.
They beat them.
Yeah,
I think Shock was so much better throughout the entirety of the kickoff clash. Yes, they lost that one matchup when Atlanta started playing the Dallas Fuel Zaya comp. I just don't think Shock were prepared to deal with the Zaya and Doomfist comps. I think they played Winston the entire time, and then Zaya Doom became like heavily meta, and I think that deals with the Winston comps quite well.
So they're one-dimensional.
In a way, but I don't think that they have to be one-dimensional. I think Kaluj could play the Zaya. I think Kaluj could play the Doomfist. I just don't think that they.
But I mean,
prepared for
Atlanta
that.
Reign
They
aren't
didn't,
necessarily
though.
one
I feel like where I
but
disagree here is that I think that Atlanta Reign proved that they should be above. But that's just my take. So.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I
mean-
see where you're coming from. I just.
I rate, but think about Reign also. We're thinking like, but Reign weren't one dimensional. They do have to swap out their tanks, and also I would argue the Reign backline has looked consistently, especially have looked really fucking good coming out of this tournament. Their DPS line I think is equivalent. So
it's really about when they performed, because their performances in the end of the qualifiers were pretty poor.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that they got outclassed by Gladiators. They looked really poor in that game against both Glads and especially the game against London. It just comes down to where you really rate them as like more, which games are more important? Is it more important that the Shock went clean in the qualifiers, or is it more important that Atlanta beat them in the head-to-head and finished ahead of them in the tournament? I don't really know. I feel better holistically about Shock heading into the future because they've demonstrated a better performance over many weeks, which is kind of why I'm still fine with the Dragons at 5th, even though they looked a bit shaky. Like, they had many map 5s, but they've been winning. They've been winning consistently over the qualifiers. And it's not just qualifiers. That is the regular season as well. Like, that does matter.
Let me throw a giga wrench into this whole power rankings, because obviously we're doing rating. We're going into a Zen meta, 100%, and I think that is going to completely invalidate everything that we've done here right now. Because and that's the thing. Like, I'm looking at these teams, and like a team like the San Francisco Shock, who I think got exposed. We go into a double flex support meta with like Hitscan and then like Sigma, which is where I think we're going. I think San Francisco Shock fly up the rankings, and maybe that's what I can't get over in my brain of like, I actually think San Francisco Shock has a great roster. I love what they're doing with their core. As much as they kind of got in this kickoff clash playoffs, I think they're about to be way better than they are now.
okay. I mean, you can definitely. I feel like Reign have some of those same things. Them, but I guess it's much more longer term for them because also as you're waiting for Speedily for this team, and Speedily's not coming on for a long time. So, and their tank line is still going to have to be swapped. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm willing to make the call and put Shock above them for now. I'm willing to accept it.
I think
I'm
really
happy with where we are.
I think anything honestly from 2 down to 7, I don't think there can be a tier break. Honestly, I don't think there can be a tier break. And I think that's madness that there's top 7 that all feel like they could maybe make a run and win a tournament. Like maybe there should be a tier break somewhere in there, but I don't know where.
The only one I could think of is like maybe above. Like it's just because Glads look so fucking good and so well rounded. You'd be like maybe a tier break there, but like the thing is, I think Dynasty would play them really close. Yeah. So like I don't think it's fair in North America. If we were only doing North America, I would have put a tier break between Glads and everyone else, though.
Yeah, same.
But
I could have seen any of the top 5 teams winning the tournament. Actually, maybe the top 6 teams winning the tournament. After the tournament, I could still see any of the top 3 teams winning that tournament. I could have seen a world where Fusion won if Dragons got to the finals. I think Fusion would have won that final. So that's kind of mad. I mean, you've got some quality teams this season. You got some peaks.
I don't like that we put Philadelphia Fusion 3rd after they a week ago lost to Hangzhou and Chengdu.
Yeah, I think Fusion's too high myself. I agree as well, but
but they also they look great.
Who do you want to put above them? Would you want to put Shanghai above Philly?
No. I'm just asking for the humble 3-4 swap. That's all I require.
Oh, you want Dallas Fuel? I just don't like Dallas Fuel dominated North America playing the Xayah composition. I just didn't like any of the other looks that they provided.
I think Fusion could.
And people are going to solve them.
If Profit doesn't hit that 2K pulse bomb, Fusion win in APAC. There is no world where Dallas won in APAC. There's just no. Sorry, of course there isn't. They don't play in APAC.
There is
there's no world I could see where Dallas win in North America. There was just an insurmountable object in front of them called the Gladiators.
Okay.
And maybe that's just because Gladiators are so much better than everybody else, but I don't know. I think it's so difficult to call this top ranking. So audio listeners have been molding, by the way, for these power ranking segments because they have no idea where we are at the end of this mess. So I'm going to read off the list. So from top to bottom, we got Gladiators at number 1, Seoul and Fusion in 2 and 3, Fuel Dragons, the rivalry from last year, at 4 and 5, Shock at number 6, Rain at 7th, a tier break, then the middle of the pack, Spark, Mayhem, Outlaws, Defiant. Then your controversial 12th through 16th is Valiant, Spitfire, Hunters, Justice, Boston. That might be the most mental part of the entire list. 17th through 20th is Paris, Charge, XL, Titans. Which, again, you got some mad shit going down there as well. Okay. Like I said earlier during the break, there are some news items, but we'll push them to next week, I think, because this has already been a long episode. We have Preds to do next week as well, etc., etc. So, we've got our last segment, our most important segment. It's Bren's Player of the Week. And for Bren's Player of the Week, I probably should have asked Bren. And he was watching the games there next to me. But I didn't ask him. I'm trying to think who we were watching the games. I'm trying to think who he would have said. I don't know who he would have said, actually. So I'm just going to pick somebody. I think, personally, Bren's Player of the Week this week kind of has to be Profit. I think it has to be Profit.
Okay.
The reason being is that I love the arc of like Patty with the Gladiators and the improvement there and stuff as well. But the Glads are so well coached. Kevster and Shu are fucking ridiculous. Like the whole team is just absurd. But on Seoul, watching Profit do what he does fills me with the joy of the ancients. I feel like making cave paintings of Profit. I feel like, you know, when your soul is illuminated and you just want to immortalize a player for all time. That's what I get when I watch Profit. And the things that he does, the way he expresses himself, Jonathan, on DPS, it's just really fun to watch. I wasn't able to catch up on every moment of APAC, but the games that I watched and the moments I watched of the Genjis going fucking dumb crazy with Zest Alpha Yi, of Profit doing his stuff, of Smurf winning again and flexing around all over the place. APAC's top teams are so fun. And the meta that they were playing was a bit more flashy than what we saw in North America. So it was definitely worth a watch if any of you are North American fans and didn't get a chance to see it. Any other nominees for Bren's Player of the Week? I'm not Bren. I don't have the final say.
I mean, it was probably going to be him. It was probably going to be him or Patiphan. probably. I mean, you could also argue Smurf potentially, because Smurf also like went from not playing good off tank to playing off tank incredibly well on top of his Winston, and allowed for Dynasty to Keeley win this. So I think those were the 3 picks, and I don't hate any of them. So I'm fine to go with Prophet. So I think the Patiphan storyline is just like actual anime though, Prophet is also anime in some ways. So it's like
already been hit so much as well, right? Like Patty has already gotten so much credit, and we've been highlighting him so much. Like I think giving some love to APAC. I think so many people just like overlook the APAC region, and like I think people just expect this level of brilliance from Prophet at this point that we become numb to it. But like he was on another level. And
I swear,
he deserves it.
As long as he can play stuff that has impact all year, as long as there's not some weird meta where I don't even know what he could play where he doesn't have impact though, because he had impact on Reaper, he had impact on Genji, he had impact on Tracer.
Hit scan's fine. It's not.
If it was like double long range hit scan where he has to play like Ashe and Fitz is on Widow or something like that, then maybe that could be a problem for him. But I think he's going to get unlocked this year. I think that Smurf Prophet duo they're going to unlock each other and just be crazy. I think they're going to be nuts. Okay, that's the final topic for this week. That concludes episode 132. If you're watching live, when we end this video, it'll be your first time to be able to actually comment, a comment instead of typing in the live chat. I want to know who you think is the greatest of all time, whether it's Prophet, whether it's Smurf or Void or who are some other people, Fleder or Lip or Lee J. Gone, Violet, whoever you think is the GOAT right now, is going to be the GOAT by the end of the season. Drop a comment at the end of this episode once the live chat disappears. And if you're watching this on the VOD, you can do it already. And why not turn up to watch our episodes live? They happen every Tuesday at midday Central Time for you Americanos. Okay, that does it for us. Episode 132. We're out. We'll be back next week with more news, more Preds. We'll see you then.
Toby Coach of the Year.